Chapter 431. Oh my God, why are all these cars? Chi couldn't believe her eyes as she pointed at the parking lot outside. If she didn't know beforehand that this was a top-class cocktail party, she would have thought that this was a birthday party of a township enterprise. Because at this time, there were almost no cars worth more than $500,000 in the parking lot. Looking around, almost 70% of the cars were Audi A6s. All of them were 18 models, and there wasn't even a 2.0 model. Almost all of them were of the same model. The cheapest car was $410,000, and the most expensive one was $460,000. Other than that, most of the cars were Japanese cars, including Shanghai's Cadillac, some other American cars, and some domestic cars, such as Volvo and Infiniti. There wasn't a single SUV or Jeep, and there weren't any bad cars. There weren't any cars worth more than $100,000. Basically, all the cars were worth between $200,000 and $400,000. The cars parked here were indeed the same as the cars parked at the entrance of a township's richest man's birthday party. Seeing this, Chi was a little confused. What was going on? She didn't believe that the owners of these cars were poor. But what the hell were they doing driving these cars? Could it be that the Middle Eastern nouveau riche didn't like other people driving luxury cars? Seeing her puzzled expression, Jiang Hai smiled. He actually didn't know either. This was what Du Feynman told him when he called. The reason why he drove these cars was naturally not because Du Feynman didn't like them. It was because the main guests of this cocktail party were different. As mentioned earlier, the people invited by Du Feynman this time were mostly people in the political circle and influential officials in the capital. Other than that, it was important to note that these were the top businessmen. These officials were the main guests. As for the businessmen, they were just accompanying. Under the background of the imperial court, why would the officials drive cars? If the cars were too shabby, people would say that they were fake. If the cars were too good, people would report and investigate them. Therefore, cars worth $300,000 to $500,000 were the most important. And the main source of these cars was the official cars. Of course, the investigation of private use of government vehicles was very strict now. However, if a government vehicle broke down after a year and needed to be replaced, then the broken vehicle would naturally be disposed of very cheaply to the original leader of the unit. This was also a hidden rule. The imperial court also turned a blind eye to it. As long as it was not too ruthless, no one would care. After all, this money was really not much to these high-ranking officials. It was precisely because these people were the main characters that the cars they drove were all of this level. When those businessmen came over, they would drive cars worth $8 million or $10 million. Yes, they knew that they were rich. Why were they showing off here? Whose face are you slapping? Do you still want to do business after you leave this place? You're so arrogant. I'll teach you a lesson. Therefore, all businessmen would be very sensible in such situations. Their cars couldn't be too good, but they couldn't be too bad either. If it was too bad, these officials would recognize them. Wouldn't that be a loss of face? Therefore, he could only be on par with the officials. This was also something that was tacitly agreed upon. Chi had never attended such a high-class event before, so it was natural that she didn't know about it. Under the guidance of the security guard, Jiang Hai drove to the spot that was prepared for him in the parking lot. Du Feynman was obviously very interested in Jiang Hai, because he knew very well that Jiang Hai still had $400 million of oil futures in his hands. Therefore, he didn't treat Jiang Hai lightly at all. The car was parked in the middle of the second row of the parking lot. When the car was parked, two Ford Taurus slowly drove in from a distance, but their positions were much further away, almost at the back. When the two cars were parked, a man in his 30s got out of the first car with his female companion. 3 men got out of the second car. Jiang Hai was very familiar with them, and Chi was even more familiar with them. They were the 3 from the Yin family. When the 3 of them got out of the car, they made eye contact with Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai clenched his fists in an instant, and his body unconsciously emitted a murderous aura, but Qi Li suppressed it. Now is not the time. Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai took a deep breath. He knew that Azalina would help him solve this problem. Then, without saying anything else, he directly led Qi Li into the villa in front of him. As for the three and family members in the distance, when they saw Jiang Hai and Qi Li, their killing intent became even stronger. Especially when they saw that Jiang Hai's car was parked in the second row, they really hated him to the point that the roots of their teeth itched. They really didn't expect that Jiang Hai would actually climb up the social ladder. Let's go. Don't talk nonsense after you go in. If it weren't for our family owing you a favor, would you still want to come in? Just as the three from the In family were glaring at Jiang Hai, the man in front of them said faintly. Then, he looked at the three from the In family with slight disgust and walked in with his female companion. Although the three of them felt their faces hurt, especially in Deshuan, they could only smile and nod in agreement. Then, they followed the man into the villa. Although the villa didn't look very big from the outside, after walking in, one would find that it was a different world inside. After passing the security check and walking through the door, what greeted Jiang Hai and Qi Li was a huge hall. This hall was about 5,000 square meters. In the middle was a long table with fruits and cold dishes. The four corners also had different kinds of food. One of the corners was a bar with three bartenders working hard to mix drinks. It was an excellent place to create an atmosphere. On the other side, there was a barbecue chef grilling skewers. Perhaps only the people from the new province knew how much the Arabians liked to eat barbecue. On the huge skewer, there were all kinds of barbecue skewers. Several Arabian chefs were working hard to grill the meat. Many young people gathered there. They were also very interested in the food. Then, in the other two corners, one was baking cakes and bread on the spot, and the other was making teppanyaki. It could be said that Du Feimin's banquet wasn't as simple as just drinking. He seemed to be very interested in eating. After Qi Li walked into the hall, she felt that her eyes weren't enough. This was because at this time, there were almost 100 people gathered in the hall. These people were both men and women. Some were gathered together, while others were looking for food. Among them, there were many people in their 40s and 50s. Qi Li felt that they were familiar, but she was very sure that she didn't know them. In her opinion, there was only one possibility, which was that she had seen them on TV before. In addition, there were some people that she had only heard of before. These people were the top tycoons in the capital's business circle. Although there weren't any particularly famous people on the surface, these people's personal wealth was definitely more than 20 billion yuan. Although it wasn't much more than Qi Li's family wealth, don't forget that Qi Li's wealth was in the family. The money mainly didn't belong to her, but to her mother and her two younger sisters. How much could her family wealth be? Moreover, 10 billion yuan was actually just a starting point in the circle of these tycoons. Only those with more than 1 million yuan were considered second class. Only those with more than 2 million yuan or even 30 billion yuan could touch the edge of the top circle. Usually, no matter if these people attended any cocktail party that Qi Li and the others could attend, they would definitely be the finale. But at this time, they were just some small side characters, nothing more. Hey! Niece Qi, why are you here? Just when Qi Li felt that her eyes weren't enough, a slightly unexpected voice came from the side. Then, a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 50s or 60s with a balding head and a beer belly came over. There was a trace of surprise and doubt in his eyes. Hey! Uncle Zhou, you're here too. Let me introduce you. This is my husband, Jiang Hai. This is Uncle Zhou, Zhou Yu, who is now the director of the Ministry of Land and Resources. Looking at the middle-aged man, Qi Li smiled and immediately introduced him. At the same time, she hinted at Jiang Hai with her eyes. In fact, Jiang Hai had heard of this person before, but not from Qi Li, but from Qi Li's mother. This person should be the protector of the Qi family in the capital. This person was also from the military. He had once been saved by Qi Li's father. Later on, when he arrived at the capital, he sought refuge with him. That was how the Qi family became what it was today. After all, this person came from the army and was very loyal. If it wasn't for him, the Qi family might have been finished when Qi Li's father died. Later, it was said that he had always wanted his son to marry Qi Li, but with Jiang Hai, this matter was finally left unsettled. "You're Mr. Zhou." "Oh, hello, I've heard of you. Niece Qi is a good person. You must be good to her." Hearing Qi Li's words, Zhou Yu also smiled and took the initiative to stretch out his hand. After shaking hands with Jiang Hai, he said with a serious face. Sure." Hearing his words, what can Jiang Hai say? My marriage with Qi Li is just a fake one. Stop fooling around. At this time, he has to give some face to the other party. Although it is a little awkward, Jiang Hai can only say with a smile. Dad, you're here, hey? Xiao Li is also here. I originally wanted to call you and invite you to come together, but my dad said that he was afraid that you would be uncomfortable if you came, so I didn't call. This is. Just as the two shook hands, another voice came, and then a man who looked a little like Zhou Yu, but much younger, came over. This man was more than 1.8 meters tall and his body was very well proportioned. The most important thing was that his eyes were bright and his body looked very strong. He was wearing a formal suit and was holding 2 glasses of mixed wine in his hands. He was a sunny and handsome man. Along the way, he attracted a lot of attention, but when he saw Qi Li, his eyes began to shine. Chapter 432. This is my husband, Jiang Hai. This is Zhou Xian, Uncle Zhou Yu's son. Looking at the handsome young man walking over, Qi Li's face was slightly embarrassed. Speaking of which, Zhou Xian was quite good in this circle. Perhaps it was because his father was from the military, so he did not have the habit of spoiling his son. Since young, Zhou Xian did not have a bad reputation like those second generations. Instead, he had a good reputation. He had been good at his studies since elementary school. At the same time, he was not bad looking. He also had sports talents, basketball and football. When he was in university, he even participated in Cuba and was the team's #1 scorer. However, when he got older, he did not go to the CBA to develop his career. There was nothing bad about his private life. He did not smoke, nor was he debauched. He also did not have any bad side effects. Now, he was working in the Ministry of Land. Although he was only a small staff member, with his father's connections, no one dared to look down on him or exclude him. When he had nothing to do, his hobby was to exercise. He ran every morning, ran at night, and played basketball in the afternoon after work. His life was very healthy. This was what Zhou Yu was most proud of in this circle. His son did not have to worry about anything. Qi Li and he met in high school. At that time, Qi Li's father was already relying on Zhou Yu. The relationship between the two families was quite good. From the first time he saw Qi Li, Zhou Xian liked Qi Li. However, Qi Li did not like such a hypocrite. After going to university, Qi Li went abroad and met in Changwu. When she came back, Zhou Xian was very sad. However, with Zhou Yu's character, he would not do anything to steal his love. Therefore, he could not do anything when he saw his son in pain. Later, after the change in the Qi family, he thought it was an opportunity to let Qi Li marry his son. Unfortunately, Qi Li's mother would definitely not let her family's foundation be taken advantage of by others. This was because she knew that although Zhou Yu and Zhou Xian were good people, once she married into their family, Zhou Xian would have the final say. At that time, it would only be a matter of time before the Qi family changed its name to the Zhou family. That was why they chose Jiang Hai, who had no chance. Jiang Hai was a good person. He didn't have any power or background. Furthermore, he knew everything about him. He wasn't a bad person. Even if she could be used to shut the mouths of the Qi Li family members, she had no ambition. Even if she had a child with Qili in the future, even if the child's surname was Jiang, wouldn't it be up to them to educate the child? Jiang Hai was basically a bad guy, he didn't have any right to speak. It could be seen that the person who controlled Jiang Hai's fate was actually Qi Li's mother. One had to admit that the older, the wiser. Oh, hello. My name is Zhou Xian. I'm now working in the Ministry of Land and Resources. Hearing Qi Li's introduction, Zhou Xian's eyes couldn't help but stagnate. Then, he sized up Jiang Hai and reached out his hand confidently. In fact, he didn't think that there was anything to be unconfident about because he knew about Jiang Hai's situation in the past. He was a bachelor and didn't even have a job. He had to rely on Qi Li to live off her. Now, it seemed that other than being taller than him, he didn't seem to have any advantages. He wasn't as handsome as him, and his background was even worse. The most important thing was this guy's brain short-circuited? What the hell is he wearing on such an occasion? My name is Jiang Hai. I raise cattle. Looking at his appearance, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile. Was he born to attract criticism? The moment the two shook hands, Jiang Hai felt that Zhou Xian was slowly increasing his strength. This made Jiang Hai a little speechless. In the past, he had only heard of such a melodramatic plot on TV or in novels. He didn't expect that he would actually encounter it. However, Jiang Hai wasn't a pushover. If you increase your strength, then I will also increase my strength. Twice the strength of the human limit, was it something that two people who liked to exercise could compare with? In an instant, Jiang Hai increased his strength, and this person's face turned purple. Cough, Niece Qi, let me introduce you to the people here. Since you are here, don't waste this opportunity. Seeing that his son had actually suffered a loss in the hands of Jiang Hai, Zhou Yu immediately said. People were biased. Although Zhou Yu was not a bad person, he definitely had to stand on his son's side. Originally, his son wanted to compare notes with Jiang Hai, so it was inconvenient for him to speak. However, his son was at a disadvantage, so he had to make a move. Hearing his words, Zhou Xian instantly withdrew his hand and then gently put it behind his back. If someone was behind him at this time, they would definitely see that there was an obvious purple circle on Zhou Xian's hand. This was caused by Jiang Hai's pinch. Looking at his appearance, Jiang Hai couldn't help but chuckle. Blindly showing off. Was his strength something that he could compare with? In fact, Jiang Hai had only used less than 30% of his strength to pinch like this. If Jiang Hai had used more strength, he would have crushed Zhou Xian's hand with 50% of his strength. Looking at Jiang Hai in front of him, Zhou Xian couldn't help but curse in his heart. He was really useless. An old cow raiser dared to come here and dared to be so arrogant. However, he had to admit that this cow raiser's strength was really great. Oh, Uncle Zhou, there's no need. I still have to accompany my husband. Hearing Zhou Yu's words, Qi Li also smiled and refused. Hearing what she said, Zhou Yu and Zhou Xian were a bit surprised. It had to be known that being able to sneak in was not an easy matter. Any one of the people inside would have to stomp their feet and walk around unsteadily on the outside. What did she say now? In order to accompany Jiang Hai, she didn't want to get to know the people here? Did this Qi Li become stupid after marriage? Shaoli, you should go and get to know some people. This place is only so big. Brother Jiang Hai won't get lost, right? Seeing Qi Li's determined look, Zhou Xian shook his wrist and said with a serious face even though he had just suffered a loss. At the same time, he looked at Jiang Hai with a red gaze. What was a cow raiser doing here? Hey, Mr. Jiang, you're here. Why are you only here now? However, before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by someone. Zhou Xian couldn't help but turn around to look at the source of the voice with some anger. In the end, he found that the person who interrupted him was about the same age as his father. At this time, he was running toward Jiang Hai with a smile. It was obvious that he attached great importance to Jiang Hai. Although Zhou Xian didn't know who this person was, Zhou Yu did. When he saw this person coming over, he subconsciously stood at attention. "Oh, you just came over. Where's Du Feimin?" Looking at this person, Jiang Hai also smiled. This person was no stranger to Jiang Hai because this person was the person in charge who had talked to him about persuading Du Feimin that day. Jiang Hai didn't know what this person's job was. Jiang Hai also didn't know what this person's position was. However, looking at Zhou Yu's appearance, it was clear that this person's rank was definitely not low. Seeing this person walk over quickly, Jiang Hai also smiled and greeted him. "Mr. Mactum is in the room discussing with the representatives of the imperial court. When will you?" This person looked at Jiang Hai and spoke very carefully. After all, the relationship between Jiang Hai and Du Feimin was one of their bargaining chips. "Then let's talk about it later. I'm a little hungry. I'm going to get some food." Looking at the food around him, Jiang Hai smiled and took the initiative to speak. Hearing this person smiled and tactfully retreated. However, before he left, he saw Zhou Yu standing to the side. "Minister Qin, hello." Looking at the person in front of him, Zhou Yu's face was filled with smiles as he spoke modestly. "Oh, hello. You are." Zhou Yu recognized this middle-aged man, but the middle-aged man didn't recognize him, so he asked with some confusion. "My name is Zhou Yu. I'm from the Ministry of Land and Resources." Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Zhou Yu immediately introduced himself. "Oh, old Zhang's subordinate. You know Mr. Zhang? Then you've got it right." Hearing his introduction, this person couldn't help but smile and pat his head. Then, he looked at Jiang Hai and joked with him with a smile. Although he was half joking, Zhou Yu clearly heard some things from this person's words. For example, this Jiang Hai was definitely not simple. Not only did he know Minister Qin, but it seemed that Minister Qin had a favor to ask of him. At the same time, the most important thing was that Du Feimin, who he just mentioned, was very likely to be the protagonist of this banquet. Thinking of this, a thin layer of sweat appeared on Zhou Yu's forehead. Who exactly was this Jiang Hai? Was he really a guy with nothing to do? Or was he, as he said, a cattle farmer? When did a cattle farmer become friends with a rich man from the Middle East, and what they said could reach the heavens? Wasn't this bullshit? Dad? After joking around with Zhou Yu, Minister Qin left. As for Zhou Xian, he walked over to Zhou Yu, who was still in a daze, and softly called out to him. Hearing his son's words, Zhou Yu recovered from his shock. This Jiang Hai is definitely not an ordinary person. You just offended him. You'd better leave first. Pulling his puzzled son over, Zhou Yu leaned over and whispered in his ear. Hearing his father's words, Zhou Xian felt helpless, regretful, jealous, and scared. He was helpless because he knew that if Jiang Hai's identity was really not simple, then it would never be possible for him and Qi Li. He regretted it because he was blinded by his jealousy and anger. Why did he offend Jiang Hai? He was jealous because he didn't know what kind of luck this guy had. He actually had Minister Qin backing him up. Although Minister Qin did not know them, the father and son knew him. He was the deputy minister of the Ministry of State Security. Was that a joke? He was scared because he was really scared that Jiang Hai would deal with him. So after hearing Zhou Yu's words, he hesitated for a moment and quickly left. Although it was pitiful to lose this opportunity, he had to be alive. However, it was obvious that Zhou Xian was thinking too much because Jiang Hai really did not have the intention to deal with him at this time. Of course, if he kept appearing in front of him, then it would be hard to say. After meeting with Minister Qin, Jiang Hai went to the front of the restaurant and prepared to start sweeping the goods. When others came to such a banquet, talking was the most important thing, but for Jiang Hai, eating was the most important thing. Chapter 433. This kind of cocktail party was a rare opportunity for others. There were plenty of business opportunities and opportunities to curry favor with officials. Huaxia was a world based on officials after all. Since ancient times, it had been scholars, farmers, businessmen, and businessmen. Officials were more than one level above ordinary people. In the United States, money was everything, but in China, money was useless. Power was the most important. For Huaxia people, the business at the dinner table was the real business. The friendship at the dinner table was the friendship that could be deepened. Almost everyone was holding a glass of wine and swaying back and forth. Especially those rich businessmen, their eyes were fixed on those high-ranking officials. If they could befriend one of them, not to mention how much money they could earn, if the other party could just give them a warning if the wind was blowing in the wrong direction, then it would be a great service. Even the underlings who had just joined, the Yin family, and the other two were looking around. They did not notice that at this time, in the outermost area, a taxi slowly drove over. Then, with a bang, the front cover of the taxi emitted thick smoke. Then, a person wearing a loose taxi driver's uniform got out of the car helplessly. After making a phone call, he squatted in the distant woods and smoked. Although the camera was too far away and could not see the person's appearance clearly, it could clearly see the red dot that rose from time to time, which was the cigarette butt. Therefore, this scene did not attract the attention of the peripheral security guards. In fact, if someone came over to take a look, they would find that there was no cigarette butt here. It was nothing more than a reddish light spot, moving along with an electric hydraulic lever without any frequency. This red dot would go out for a period of time every 10 minutes or so and then light up again after a while. This was also considered high-tech. As for the original taxi driver, he used an almost unimaginable speed and quickly disappeared into the woods on both sides of the road. He quickly ran towards the parking lot in the distance. This black shadow was like a ghost. There was no sound, no movement, and just like that, it floated towards the villa. With Azalina handling things, Jiang Hai was very relieved. This doesn't mean that the KGB in Russia is stronger than our country. It was just that Azalina was a professional. Most importantly, she was in this line of work. Naturally, her means were much more professional than the average security personnel, even if some of these people came from the imperial city. Therefore, Jiang Hai was still very relaxed and didn't bother with the Yin family. He would let them be arrogant for a while. Then, he led Qili to the long table in the middle and began to look at the food in front of him. One had to admit that Du Feimin was very rich, and the people of the imperial court were very sincere. Although this banquet was held in the name of Du Feimin, the ingredients were truly the best ingredients in the country. Oh no, it could be said that they were the best ingredients in the world. In the long and cold dining hall, there were all kinds of food. The most eye-catching was the various kinds of sashimi. Bluefin tuna sashimi. The whole tuna looked no smaller than the ones in Jiang Hai's manor. The head and tail were still intact, but the meat on the body had been sliced into small thin slices, folded in half, and placed in the middle of the fish. Next to the tuna, there were lobster sashimi, Arctic scallop sashimi, mullet roe, sturgeon roe, handheld sushi, and so on. At a glance, it really made people feel a little cold. Because Jiang Hai didn't eat raw food, no matter how valuable these things were, he didn't care about them. In addition to these sashimi and sushi, there were chocolate waterfalls, various fruit plates, cold dishes, sausages, and so on in front of him. Well, in fact, Jiang Hai didn't know much. He wasn't very clear about the specific things here. There were many things he hadn't seen before, but it didn't matter as long as they were delicious. So he walked along the table and ate. As he ate, a figure blocked his way. "Hey, I'm still looking for you. Brother, you're really late." Looking up, Jiang Hai saw Du Feimin's face. At this time, the Arabian royal was still wearing the same white robe as Jiang Hai saw him. Seeing Jiang Hai, he couldn't help but smile and pat Jiang Hai's shoulder enthusiastically. Jiang Hai was a little confused about his attitude, because the relationship between the two wasn't so close. They only had a relationship of buying and selling, and they had only met 3 times. His enthusiasm now made Jiang Hai a little confused. Am I late? It's okay. I'm not here to look for someone. I'm here to eat. While stuffing some Goliath ham into his mouth, Jiang Hai said vaguely. No matter what he was planning, he would just go along with it. I can see that you are indeed different, but you didn't eat the best food here. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Du Feimin led Jiang Hai to a pile of sashimi. Oh. Du Feimin, I don't eat raw things, so forget about the sashimi. Besides, there are also bluefin golden spears in my manor. Waving his hand, Jiang Hai indicated that Du Feimin didn't need to introduce him. He was indeed not used to eating raw things. Hey, brother, don't worry, I won't cheat you. Come and have a taste. If you don't like it, then forget it. Besides, I won't let you eat bluefin. However, when Du Feimin heard Jiang Hai's words, he shook his head and mysteriously led him to the front of a sashimi. This sashimi wasn't like the bluefin or lobster beside it. It didn't have a lobster head or a fish head to let people know what it was at first glance. This plate of sashimi was just a thin plate of fish, nothing more. What is this? Looking at the fish fillet in front of him, Jiang Hai asked with some confusion. Unparalleled delicacy. Looking at Jiang Hai, Du Feimin smiled and directly picked up a piece with his hand. After dipping it in the sauce that had been prepared for him, he stuffed it into his mouth with a satisfied expression. Looking at his appearance, Jiang Hai also picked up a piece with his chopsticks, dipped it in some seasoning, and put it into his mouth. As soon as it entered his mouth, there was a fishy taste, which made Jiang Hai frown slightly. However, he didn't want to embarrass Du Feimin, so he gently took a bite. This bite made Jiang Hai's eyes light up instantly. The fish meat was like tendons. When Jiang Hai took a bite, not only did it have a bit of chewiness, which was very rare in fish meat, but this meat could be chewed in an instant after chewing. Every fiber of the fish meat would bounce against the teeth. This kind of texture would make people chew continuously subconsciously. Jiang Hai was the same. After chewing 3 times, the original fishy taste had completely disappeared, leaving only a fresh taste. Fresh, especially fresh. The fish meat was smooth, bouncy, and a bit chewy. Even the abalones raised by Jiang Hai weren't as fresh as this. This made Jiang Hai extremely surprised. After eating 1 piece, he unexpectedly picked up his chopsticks and ate a second piece. Looking at Jiang Hai's satisfied expression, Du Feimin also smiled and started eating. Okay, let's eat. What kind of meat is this? Why is it so delicious? While chewing the fish meat in front of him, to be honest, although this meat was not as good as Jiang Hai's strongest beef, in terms of fish meat, it was already better than any fish meat that Jiang Hai had ever eaten. This made him a little curious. Of course, if he was curious, he wouldn't just ask. He could introduce it. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Du Feimin stuffed the fish meat into his mouth and said with a smile, "This is a pufferfish." However, after hearing his words, Jiang Hai's chopsticks couldn't help but pause. As mentioned before, Jiang Hai was a timid person. He was very afraid of death. This game was poisonous. It was different from soaking in alcohol. If he wasn't careful, he would die from eating it. This made him a little confused. Seeing Jiang Hai's surprised expression, Du Feimin said with a smile, "Don't worry, the chef who made this has a professional license." Moreover, before the dish was served, he had already eaten it an hour in advance. If nothing happened, it would be served. Otherwise, do you think your court would let it go easily if someone here was poisoned to death? Indeed, if anything were to happen to any of the people present today, it would be a huge shock to the country. However, today, Jiang Hai wanted to make it a shock. Of course, he didn't use this kind of fish meat. Sigh, I originally wanted to bring some back to raise, but it looks like it's impossible. Hearing Du Feimin's words, Jiang Hai sighed. It's possible to import it. This thing can be found everywhere, both in the country and abroad. However, there is a problem. That is, there are too few people who can make this thing. If Jiang Hai eats this thing, the gains won't make up for the losses. Sigh, this is nothing. This is only ranked in the top 10 of today's food. It's not even in the top 10. Let's go, I'll take you to eat something good. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Du Feynman smiled, then took the initiative to bring Jiang Hai to the teppanyaki. Seeing Du Feynman bring Jiang Hai over, the chef who was cooking couldn't help but nod. Then, he took out a plate of freshly made fried fish and handed it over. Looking at this plate of fried fish, many people who were just wandering nearby stopped. They looked at the fish in front of them in surprise, because these fish weren't very famous to foreigners. However, to the people in the country, this fish was actually a real ingredient with a sky-high price. Come, try it. Actually, I heard that this kind of fish is best braised, but I don't like it. It's better this way. Dragging Jiang Hai along, Du Feynman arrived in front of the counter, picked up a fork, and began to eat. Jiang Hai also picked up a fish and put it in his mouth. In an instant, a freshness that was different from the blowfish filled his mouth. Chapter 434. Well. This fish tastes good, but it has too many bones. You foreigners don't like to eat fish with bones, right? After taking a bite, Jiang Hai asked Du Feynman in front of him while picking out the bones. This fish does taste fresh and quite good, but it has too many bones, which is troublesome to eat. That's why I fry it like this. After the bones are crisped, the taste is still very good. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Du Feynman also said with a smile. This fish is best braised, but this is the reason why it is fried. What kind of fish is this? Jiang Hai is not used to eating fish with bones, so he said while picking out the bones. This is Changjiang swordfish. Hearing Zhang Tai's words, Qi Li, who had been picking out fish bones and eating fish behind Zhang Tai, interjected. Changjiang swordfish? This is Changjiang swordfish? Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai can't help but be surprised. Changjiang swordfish has been very popular in recent years. It has grown from dozens of yuan per catty to hundreds, thousands, and even tens of thousands. Before going abroad, Jiang Hai had heard of Changjiang swordfish and specially went to the seafood market to have a look. However, there is no Changjiang swordfish in the seafood market of Bing City, only swordfish, but the swordfish is not expensive. He later learned about it. Although it is called Changjiang swordfish, in fact, this fish has nothing to do with swordfish. The so-called swordfish refers to hairtail, which can grow to more than 1 meter long and has a large yield. It is one of the most productive marine fish. It is mainly produced in the Western Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. Basically, it is located in warm waters and can also be cultivated. Jiang Hai's manor is located in the Atlantic Ocean. There is also this fish, but it is very rare. This fish's taste is ordinary, and the meat is also very ordinary, so Jiang Hai usually does not catch it. Just like the hairtail in Jiang Hai's manor, the biggest one is almost 1.5 meters long. Jiang Hai does not know how big it will grow. Anyway, Jiang Hai does not intend to eat it. The Yangtze River grenadier fish is not this kind of hairtail fish. It is a kind of freshwater fish and its scientific name is the long-jawed fish. Although this type of fish was very valuable in China, it was not the only type of fish in China. This type of fish could be found in the whole of Asia and even the whole world. This type of fish could be found in the Yangtze River basin of Huaxia, Malaysia, Borneo, Phuket, and even the Amazon River basin. However, other than in China, there were no overseas markets for this type of fish. But now that it was mentioned, Jiang Hai was a little tempted. He was afraid that the pufferfish would be poisonous, but there was nothing wrong with raising this fish. Is it very difficult to breed? There was no such thing in Jiang Hai's dictionary. Once spiritual energy appeared, everything would have to bow down. Looks like I'm going to build a river in the manor. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai muttered in his heart. Originally, he wanted to make a freshwater river because he wanted to eat eels, so he had to breed them himself. But this was just an idea. After all, it was impossible for him to make a river just to eat eels. It would cost a lot of money. Although Jiang Hai was not short of money, he didn't need to waste too much money. After all, no one ate eels in Boston. Foreigners didn't eat eels. Jiang Hai remembered watching a program about food. Hua Xia and French chefs competed. They chose ingredients for each other. As a result, after the French got the eels, they didn't know how to cook them. Western food was different from place to place. But if the first Western food was French and Italian, even the French chefs didn't know how to cook eels. What kind of market would there be in the United States? Therefore, it was not Jiang Hai's style to only go out and not go in. But now it seemed that it was a good idea to build a river. He could raise some freshwater, very valuable fish and sell them to Chile. Thinking about it, once the Yangtze River grenadier fish was launched in the restaurant, it was estimated that the price could be increased many times. Moreover, there was no need to build a river, divert water, or pump water. There were many small rivers in the Boston area. He could just draw one over. If he didn't want to draw water, he could dig a river himself. The underground water was also quite rich. How much would it cost to dig a river? Jiang Hai didn't care about this. After memorizing the scientific name of the long-jawed swordfish in his mind, Jiang Hai began to focus his attention on other things. Not to mention, when he looked at it, he really saw a cooked fish. This fish looks a bit like the American red fish, but it's not quite the same. He picked up a piece and took a bite. Jiang Hai couldn't help but nod. The taste of this fish is also good. This is a large yellow croaker. Recently, it's very expensive. The molded ones are sold for nearly 1,000 yuan per catty, and the smaller ones are sold for about 800 yuan. Seeing that Jiang Hai seemed to be very satisfied, Qi Li hurriedly said, "This is not bad, I can raise it." Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai was shocked. To be honest, the taste of yellow croaker was better than the average American red fish, but it was almost the same as the American red fish raised by Jiang Hai, or even slightly worse. However, no matter how good the American red fish was, it only sold for 60 yuan per catty in China. In the United States, it was about $10 per catty, which was much more expensive than cod. However, this yellow croaker, which was also a member of the family Cyprinidae, could be sold for 10 times the price of the American red fish. Again, Jiang Hai could raise any fish, so he couldn't help but be tempted. If Jiang Hai wanted to raise 1,000,000 of them, other people would only be able to raise them up to 8 ounces in a year. However, Jiang Hai would have no problem raising them up to 2 catties. 1 catty was $80, 2 catties would be $160. 1,000,000 of them would be $160. What if he raised 2,000,000 fish, or 3,000,000 fish? In the past, Jiang Hai had always thought that his main source of income was on land. This was because beef was very valuable, but now his cattle had almost reached their limit. Therefore, he had to think of other ways to earn money. The fish in the sea were very good. If he could raise these fish, or even raise bluefin fishes, just supplying them to Japan and Hua Xia would be enough for him to earn as much as he did on land. Now that he thought about it, he had no choice but to choose the American red fish because there were not many types of fish sold in the United States. They had to ensure their own species characteristics and could not casually introduce foreign species. What if one day, these fish were worthless, just like the Asian carp now? Who could they go to cry to? Looking at the food in front of him, Jiang Hai's mind was spinning. Originally, when he asked Minister Qin to import domestic species, Jiang Hai's first thought was goats, pigs, and the like. Now, it seemed that he was stupid. Even if he wanted to import, he had to import these things. He was really too naive back then. The taste of this fish is indeed not bad, but because it has too many bones, I only ranked it 10th among today's ingredients. Let's go, I'll bring you to the 9th place. After patting Jiang Hai, Du Feimin continued to bring Jiang Hai to the barbecue area in the distance. The barbecue chef here was brought over by Du Feimin from Arabia, and the ingredients were also brought over by him from Arabia. This is today's 9th delicacy, camel hump. After bringing Jiang Hai here, a waiter respectfully took 3 skewers of meat from the grill and placed them on a plate. Then, he passed them to Jiang Hai, Qi Li, and Du Feimin. Camel hump? Looking at the meat in front of him, Jiang Hai hesitated for a moment. He indeed knew that Arabian barbecue was the best. Speaking of which, Arabian barbecue was the best in the world. It was not a joke, but camel hump, he knew that this thing was edible. In the ancient Manchu and Han imperial banquets, the first of the 8 treasures was camel hump. However, to be honest, when Jiang Hai imagined the appearance of camel hump, he really did not feel like eating it. Seeing that Jiang Hai was a little hesitant, Du Feimin took a bite first and then said with a smile, "Try it, it's very good." Seeing that Du Feimin had eaten, Jiang Hai also took a bite after hesitating for a moment. However, other than the resistance in his heart, when the camel hump entered his mouth, Jiang Hai's eyes could not help but light up. This meat was indeed very delicious. Camel hump was the place where camels stored energy, nutrients, and water. There were no bones here, only meat and fat. However, due to the constant storage of water throughout the year, the lean meat here naturally had the effect of tenderness and powder. The meat was very soft. The fat on the outside, after being roasted, turned into oil, but it was not greasy. In ancient times, some aristocrats liked to eat this thing very much. Of course, there were very few people who ate this thing now. After all, not many people raised camels. Camel hump was rich in protein, fat, calcium, scale, iron, vitamin A, B1, B2, and niacin. The gelatinous fat in the meat was also known as hump oil. It was sweet and non-toxic. It had the effect of moisturizing dryness, cooling the wind, promoting blood circulation, and eliminating germs. It was a rare delicacy. Jiang Hai was very satisfied with this meat. However, he did not intend to raise camels. It was not easy to raise them. Most importantly, Jiang Hai did not lack meat. This is the 9th one, and the one I ranked second is the Kobe beef. However, your beef is not worse than this one, so I guess you have long been tired of eating it. Looking at Jiang Hai's satisfied expression, Du Feimin smiled and pointed to another row of meat skewers. He specially went to Japan to buy this meat. The price was not cheap. However, although eating this kind of beef was very normal for Jiang Hai, he still made a skewer and ate it. He had never eaten Kobe beef before. He wanted to try it and see if it tasted good. Generally speaking, it tasted similar to his own beef. However, there were some subtle differences. After all, it was not the same breed of beef. However, the texture was almost the same. Of course, the taste was far worse, because one was made by Jiang Hai, and the other was made by a chef. However, compared to Qi Li's restaurant, the taste was not much different. Qi Li also ate a piece and nodded on the surface. However, in her heart, she had already made up her mind. She must tie Jiang Hai, not only for him, but also for his cows. Chapter 435. Come on. Try this. After eating the 2nd and 9th dishes in Du Feimin's heart, Du Feimin continued to bring Jiang Hai to a place further away. This was the 8th dish in his heart, fish lips. Fish lips had a long history in Huaxia. It was part of the 4 Treasures series, just like the camel hump. However, it was part of the 8 Treasures series. The so-called fish lips were made from the lips of sharks or some large fish, including the skin, eyes, and cheeks. Among them, sharks and rays belonged to the normal species. Other than that, they could also be made from sturgeon, and large yellow croaker. Among them, not many people knew about the sturgeon. This fish looked like a huge sturgeon. It was only found in Huaxia's Heilongjiang province, the border between Russia, and in Europe. It was divided into two groups. This type of fish could grow very big. The heaviest fish could reach 1 ton. It had a long lifespan, a strong body, great strength, and a large appetite. It was said that this type of fish had existed for hundreds of millions of years. It was known as the living fossil in the water. The original type of Ice City's expensive fish, there were not many of this type of fish, and the price varied. There was no accurate price. The cheap ones were a few dozen RMB per catty, and the expensive ones were a few hundred RMB per catty. There was no fixed price. The fish lips that Jiang Hai and the rest were eating were from this type of fish. The taste was quite good. However, it was impossible to taste this thing. After all, it was not easy to get. The 7th dish on Du Feimin's menu was a vegetarian dish. It was a type of mushroom called cloud incense mushroom. Perhaps even a professional mushroom farmer wouldn't know about this. This thing was also one of the 4 treasures, belonging to the 8 treasures of grass. It was very rare, and there was no way to cultivate it. It was just like pine mills. Of course, pine mills grew from pine trees. There were plenty of pine trees, so there were plenty of pine mills. Therefore, although there was no way to cultivate them, pine mills were still sold. In Du Feimin's eyes, the 6th dish was a type of bird, quail. This type of bird tasted good when roasted. Of course, the main thing was that the chef's skills were good enough. The 5th was fish roe. There was no need to talk about it. Sturgeon, salmon, and mullet were all very good fish roe. They also tasted very fragrant. In 4th place was the flying dragon. Jiang Hai had a lot of them. Well, not exactly a lot, but at least he had something to eat. The 3rd was truffle, the so-called truffle cake. Jiang Hai went to eat it. Although he was a little surprised that this plant was so expensive, to be honest, the truffle's taste was ordinary to him. At least he wasn't as obsessed as Westerners. On the other hand, it could be seen that Jiang Hai was only interested in meat. However, after knowing the price of this thing, he also considered if he should plant some in his own forest. Truffles were of different sizes and had different prices. Truffles with a diameter of more than 5 centimeters were far more expensive than those with a diameter of 1 to 2 centimeters. A kilogram of 1 to 2 centimeters of black truffles was about $500, which was a pretty good price. But for truffles with a diameter of more than 5 centimeters, 2 zeros would be added to the price, which was $50,000 per kilogram. 1 gram of gold was worth $200, so 1 kilogram was only $200,000. $50,000 per kilogram of black truffle was equivalent to $300,000. It wasn't wrong to say that truffles were more expensive than gold. As for white truffles, they were even more expensive. In 2007, 1.5 kilograms of white truffle was sold for $330,000. That was in 2007. If it were now, the price would be at least 50% higher. 150 grams of white truffle was worth $500,000. 1 gram of white truffle was worth $333, which was about $2,000. It was *T to say that it was equivalent to diamonds, but it was definitely comparable to platinum. This was the delicacy that Du Feimin placed 3rd. The 2nd was Kobe beef, which Du Feimin had already introduced. Finally, the 1st was a soup. Although it was a cocktail party hosted by Du Feimin, this soup was only available to those who were invited. But Jiang Hai could drink as much as he wanted. Jiang Hai glanced at it. He recognized the sea cucumber and black chicken, but there was something else that Jiang Hai wasn't too sure about. What is this? Jiang Hai asked Du Feimin as he scooped out the thing with a spoon. Ah, this is the most valuable thing in this soup. I heard that you Huaxia people call this flour glue. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Du Feimin said with a serious face. In order to buy this thing, his heart ached a little. Pepper? Isn't that a small grain? Hearing Du Feimin's words, Jiang Hai was a little confused. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li's eyes lit up and she explained to him, "It's flower glue, the glue of glue, a kind of tonic made from fish maw. As the old saying goes, the belly of abalone, ginseng, and shark fin is the belly of the belly. This thing is also called fish maw." Flower glue was fish maw, one of the 8 treasures of the sea. It was made from the swim bladders of large fish. Different fish made from different materials naturally had different prices. The more common ones were fish maw and eel maw. The better ones were large yellow fish maw, also called yellow flower glue. The same quality was sturgeon, yellow sturgeon, white flower glue. Different fish had different prices. The more common was yellow flower glue. The longer it was kept, the better it was. Generally, newly made ones were sold for about 400 yuan per caddy. Those that were more than 3 years old could be sold for 1,000 yuan per caddy. Those that were more than 10 years old could be sold for tens of thousands per caddy. Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be a little surprised. Even if it was sold for tens of thousands per caddy, it didn't seem very expensive. For an average family, it wasn't something they couldn't afford, although it would be a little painful. Moreover, for a nouveau riche like Du Feimin, tens of thousands per caddy was nothing. This flower glue is said to be made from the darts of Chinese bahaba fish. This pot of soup cost me $7 million. Perhaps seeing Jiang Hai's confusion, Du Feimin shook his head and sighed as he drank the soup. 7 million? Hearing his words, Jiang Hai was a little confused. How did tens of thousands of yuan become $7 million? $7 million was more than $40 million. $40 million for a pot of soup. Alright, this was a real nouveau riche. It's actually from Chinese bahaba fish. This is good stuff. Hearing Du Feimin's words, Qi Li also sped up drinking the soup. Chinese bahaba fish? Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai couldn't help but scratch his head in a daze. He seemed to have heard of this fish before. Before he went abroad, when he was browsing online, he seemed to have seen the price of this fish. It was said that a fisherman in Guangdong province caught this kind of fish and was bought by a rich businessman for 1.7 million. Then, he sold it for more than 3 million. At that time, he only thought about it. Later, when he bought the fish to raise, he only considered the fish of the Atlantic Ocean. After all, at that time, he didn't know much about the spirit qi in his body. Now, it seemed like he could kill anything in his way. However, he didn't dare to test it lightly back then. If he lost money, it would be his entire fortune. Unlike now, he didn't panic because he had money in his hands. However, if this fish was really so valuable, then Jiang Hai could consider it. However, Jiang Hai only thought about it now. One had to know that this fish was a second-class protected animal in the country. He and Minister Qin had once said that it didn't matter if it was an unprotected animal or a protected one. They could bring it in at any time. However, this kind of protected fish needed to be considered. Looking at the bowl of soup in front of him, Jiang Hai's mind also became active. What are you looking at? This kind of fish glue is not common. Seeing that Jiang Hai had been staring at the bowl of soup in front of him, Du Feimin waved the bowl in front of him and then said to him with a smile. "Oh, I'm thinking. Well, forget it. Let's wait until I succeed. By the way, Du Feimin, when did our relationship become so close? Why didn't I know?" There was still half a bowl of soup left in his hand and he gave it to Qi Li. To be honest, Jiang Hai was very interested in this kind of fish, but he didn't like to drink this bowl of soup. However, Qi Li regarded it as a treasure. "Hey, I'm very sad to hear you say that. You Chinese say it well. Strangers the first time, friends the second time, and good friends the third time. This is the 4th time we've met. Naturally, we're friends." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Du Feimin's eyes lit up. He then smiled and put his arm around Jiang Hai's shoulder and said with a smile, "But the problem is that you're not Chinese. So, let's talk about it. I still have a task to shoulder. Looking at Du Feynman, Jiang Hai shrugged and looked at him with disdain. The two of them were about the same age, but there was really a big gap in status. Jiang Hai wouldn't treat Du Feynman as a friend. Of course, he believed that Du Feynman wouldn't either. You're still so cautious. Okay, I'll tell you. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Du Feynman also smiled and said. Of course, the two of them didn't talk in the crowd. Instead, they deliberately went to the balcony on the second floor. There were many bodyguards outside to make sure that their words wouldn't be heard by anyone. Even Qili was left downstairs by Jiang Hai. And their figures were also seen by Minister Qin as they went upstairs. A trace of nervousness flashed across his face. He knew that Jiang Hai and Du Feynman had already started to contact each other. Whether this matter could be done or not depended on Jiang Hai. The reason why I held this banquet this time was to choose a middleman. After ascertaining that there was no third person, Du Feynman looked at Jiang Hai. His originally enthusiastic face had turned slightly cold as he slowly said, "Don't worry." Middleman? Hearing his words, Jiang Hai frowned. What does this mean? Chapter 436. Du Feynman smiled when he saw Jiang Hai's puzzled look. That's right. He wants Jiang Hai to be the middleman. After that, Du Feynman explained to Jiang Hai why he is so close to Jiang Hai. Although Dubai was only a small country, the other Arabian kingdoms were all in the same boat. It could be said that they were bound together for good or ill. This time, Du Feynman not only represented Dubai, but also the other Arabian countries. What do the Arabs produce? Well, apart from the terrorists, the only thing that was successful in producing oil was oil. This was also the foundation of their existence in this world. Their oil was mainly sold to the United States and some European countries. It could be said that although they were rich now, the money was given by the people who bought the oil. In other words, their oil is a buyer's market. If the US and European countries like the UK and France want to buy it, they can make a fortune. If they don't want to buy it, they can just let it rot in their hands. If someone says they want to buy oil, who will not buy it? If the US does not want to buy it, they can just sell it to other countries. But the problem is, do they dare to do it? The Arab royals are rich, but they are not as rich as the US and European countries. This is the biggest problem. They must be prepared for danger in times of peace. Now, they need the royals to stabilize the world. But what if they don't need them one day? Thinking about the wars they had fought in recent years, whether it was Iraq or Afghanistan, why did the United States attack them? Why did the US attack them? First, it is because they are using bombs. But North Korea is using bombs every day, and the US does not dare to attack them. Of course, the other reason is because North Korea is backed by Huaxia and Soviet Russia. But this is only a theory. Cuba is so close to the US, and the US did not attack them even though they are using bombs every day. This is because these countries do not have what the US needs, such as oil. Wars are not fought for reputation. They were fighting for money. At the very least, they had to be able to earn it back after this battle. This was the philosophy of the West. Therefore, Afghanistan was destroyed, and Iraq was destroyed. Of course, all of this had nothing to do with Jiang Hai, and he had no interest in politics. However, Jiang Hai understood Du Feynman's words. It was impossible for these Arab countries to put all their eggs in one basket. But on the surface, they didn't dare to sell oil to Huaxia, who was the biggest threat to the US government. Therefore, no matter how much the imperial court tried to persuade them, they didn't dare to give in. Because if anyone sold them out and caused a war, with Huaxia's current foreign policy, it was impossible for them to send troops to help. No one wanted to be the second Iraq. Originally, one party was willing to sell and the other party was willing to buy. This was a very simple matter. But the problem was that America was in the middle. Therefore, Du Feynman needed a middleman. He needed an excuse. Whether he was persuaded or threatened, he needed a middleman to divert attention. He originally organized this banquet to find a middleman. But it just so happened that Jiang Hai came back. Rather than find a middleman who he didn't know, he might as well find Jiang Hai. Moreover, Jiang Hai had $400 million of oil futures in his hands. When he heard his words, Jiang Hai was silent for the first time. The first thought that popped up in his mind was that he shouldn't get involved in this muddy water. He was just an idiot. He didn't have any ambition. If he didn't do well, he would become the pressure point between China and the United States. Jiang Hai would be depressed to death. However, what Du Feynman said next made Jiang Hai hesitate. There were only two words: benefits. The benefits of Jiang Hai being a lobbyist for Huaxia didn't need to be mentioned. Those benefits were still in Penelope's leather bag. To Jiang Hai, those benefits were real. And if he helped Du Feynman would also give him benefits. The benefits were still in two words: oil. Jiang, to be honest, there are very few oil futures in the outside world, but we have a lot of them. If you are the middleman, we can decide how much you want and sell it to you at a fair price. Under the moonlight, Du Feynman looked at Jiang Hai and smiled gently. He knew that Jiang Hai didn't have much resistance to these words. You really are a bastard. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai's heart itched like a cat was scratching it. Thank you for the compliment, but this is politics. Aside from politics, we can still be friends. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Du Feynman smiled and said. For him, this was a profitable deal. I want 600 million oil futures now. If I want more, can I buy more? Looking at Du Feynman, Jiang Hai hesitated for a moment before asking him. Now, Jiang Hai only had 600 million in cash. When he sold gems and other things, he earned less than 1 billion. Of which, 400 million was exchanged for oil futures, and he still had more than 50,000. In addition, he earned more than 300 million from selling cows. Now, Jiang Hai still had more than 800 million in cash. However, the Winthrop construction needed to spend $250 million, so Jiang Hai still had 600 million in cash left. These tens of millions were pocket money and couldn't be used. But the 600 million was useless in the bank. Jiang Hai could exchange it for something more valuable. Oil futures were basically a 20% premium in the current market. If he had 1 billion in oil futures, it would be equivalent to making 200 million for no reason. Most importantly, if he couldn't survive, he could seek refuge with some American tycoons. Even if he went to the White House, he would definitely be a guest of honor with 1 billion in oil futures. Deal, I can sell it to you again. The price is unlimited, but the only requirement is that you can't buy it with others. I'll only sell it to you. Looking at Jiang Hai, Du Feynman chuckled and said. As long as Jiang Hai was willing to be the middleman, not to mention 1 billion oil futures, even 10 billion oil futures would be worth it. Of course, the premise was that Jiang Hai could take out 10 billion. The current Jiang Hai didn't have that much money. But it didn't mean that he wouldn't have it in the future. Of course, the future he was talking about wasn't 10 or 20 years from now. In this world, people were the most unreliable. Du Feynman was so easy to talk to now, but it didn't mean that he would be so easy to talk to in the future when he and Huaxia had a stable business. It wasn't rare to get rid of someone once they had outlived their usefulness in politics. Therefore, Jiang Hai needed to get the money as quickly as possible. As for how to get it? Did it even need to be said? A man couldn't get rich without a windfall, and a horse couldn't get fat without feeding at night. The best way to get Jiang Hai's feeding at night was to sink a ship. He still had the addresses of many shipwrecks in the Caribbean. What others couldn't get didn't mean that he couldn't either. Since there was a first time, there would be a second time, a third time, a fourth time. One ship was worth $1 billion. What about 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8? Du Feimin seemed to be certain that Jiang Hai wouldn't have too much money in a short time, so he would let him bleed a little. The conversation with Du Feimin only lasted for half an hour. Then, Jiang Hai left the second floor with him and stepped into the venue on the first floor. As soon as they came down, Minister Qin saw Jiang Hai immediately. Seeing the smiles on their faces, he knew that this matter was likely to succeed. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It seemed that he had found the right person to look for Jiang Hai this time. He couldn't help but walk over excitedly. He wanted to have a private talk with Jiang Hai later to see what the specific situation was. The other two groups of people who were paying attention to Jiang Hai were Zhou Yu and the Yin family. At that moment, the three members of the Yin family were consciously standing in a corner. After entering the room, although they had already noticed Jiang Hai and Qi Li, they didn't have the leisure to provoke them. Instead, they handed out business cards everywhere, hoping to climb up the social ladder. However, it was a pity that people at this level would more or less dislike their family. Originally, they didn't expect to be able to make friends with these bigwigs through this banquet. They were just there to show their sincerity. After giving out business cards, they had a chance to meet. If they asked for favors in the future, it would be easier to talk to them. After giving out business cards for a long time, they finally got everyone's business cards. Of course, Du Feimin, Jiang Hai, and Qi Li couldn't accept them. Now that they saw Jiang Hai and Du Feimin coming down from upstairs together, the three people couldn't help but feel a little jealous. This wasn't some melodramatic novel. Logically speaking, at this time, Zhangwu should be showing off in front of his love rival, Jiang Hai, and stepping on Du Feimin while he was at it. Then, after learning Du Feimin's identity, he would be extremely terrified and get beaten up before being chased out. He would harbor a grudge in his heart. If he couldn't take revenge on Du Feimin, he would use his connections to take revenge on Jiang Hai. Assassinations, hooligans looking for trouble, suppression from the imperial court, and so on. Unfortunately, it was really difficult for these things to happen in the real world. Now, let alone looking for trouble with Du Feimin, even if they were closer to Du Feimin, they would be watched by the bodyguards. Not to mention showing off. As for the three things mentioned at the end, other than looking for trouble with hooligans, it was more reliable. Assassinations and suppression from the imperial court were impossible. After all, who was Jiang Hai now? He was Du Feimin's guest. Even the imperial court asked for help from Jiang Hai. Under such circumstances, it was too late to curry favor with Jiang Hai. Not to mention suppressing Jiang Hai. So now, when they looked at Jiang Hai, other than envy, jealousy, and hatred, they had no other thoughts. They didn't dare to make a move. Of course, the person called Jiang Rui in Boston was indeed one of them. However, just because they didn't dare to harm Jiang Hai, it didn't mean that Jiang Hai didn't dare to harm them. Chapter 437. Seeing that you are so happy, you must have done it. Looking at Jiang Hai, who was separated from Du Feimin, Minister Qin walked over to Jiang Hai with a smile and asked in a low voice. Of course, I'll leave the rest to you and the imperial court. Although this was just a favor, after all, Du Feimin also intended to sell Huaxia's oil, and he was just an excuse. Jiang Hai was not going to let go of this favor. Especially when Huaxia didn't know about this. Hearing Minister Qin's words, Jiang Hai also smiled and said softly. You are really good, the imperial court owes you a favor. What we agreed on will not change. If you need anything in the future, just let me know. Hearing that Jiang Hai had really done it, Minister Qin couldn't help but wave his fist. This time, he had solved a major problem of the imperial court. Don't wait for the future, I have something to say now. Hearing that Minister Qin was about to leave, Jiang Hai stopped him. What? Has the situation changed? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Minister Qin was stunned for a moment. What does Jiang Hai mean? Nothing has changed, but didn't our conditions say that I can introduce some animals? I want to introduce 3 kinds of animals now. Looking at Minister Qin, Jiang Hai said seriously. Okay, that's not a problem. Hearing Jiang Hai say this, Minister Qin naturally smiled. What is this? I heard that we can already breed Yangtze River grenadier fish in our country, so the first thing I want is the fry of Yangtze River grenadier fish. Looking at Minister Qin, Jiang Hai said seriously. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Minister Qin didn't hesitate. Because he didn't know how difficult it was to raise Yangtze River grenadier fish. Indeed, there were artificial breeding methods in China now, and there were about 400,000 fish a year. However, 2/3 of them couldn't survive the first month, and the remaining 1/3 required a lot of manpower to take care of. The most important thing was that this kind of fish couldn't be raised in captivity. It was a migratory fish, and it was not easy to cultivate it with the technology of seawater culture. Because of this kind of fish was really difficult to get. Of course, the so-called difficult to obtain mainly depended on the efforts of the higher-ups. In Huaxia, there was nothing that the imperial court could not do. Okay, that's not a problem. I'll check which fish farm has it. I've heard that this thing is very expensive. It's very likely that you'll have to go to Shanghai to get it. But as long as it's available in China, I'll let you take it away. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Minister Qin smiled and answered seriously. If Jiang Hai was only after money, then everything was fine. Well, in addition to Yangtze River grenadier fish, I also want the fry of giant yellow croaker. Hearing him say it so easily, Jiang Hai was relieved. It was difficult for others to raise Yangtze River grenadier fish, but it wasn't difficult for Jiang Hai. He just needed to inject spiritual qi into its body, even if it was only a trace of spiritual qi, and Jiang Hai used water plants with spiritual qi to raise it. How could the fish want to die? It was so difficult. That's not a problem. Compared with Yangtze River grenadier fish, giant yellow croaker was easier to find and cheaper. There were many fry in the coastal area. Moreover, Jiang Hai said to buy it, not that it was free. It didn't matter who he sold it to. As for whether it had been divided, it had nothing to do with Minister Qin. As the higher-up said, they had to sell it even if they didn't want to. Even if it had been put in the net, they had to take it out and let Jiang Hai take it away. This was the magnanimity of the imperial court. The last one is Chinese bahaba fish. Seeing that there was no problem with the first two kinds of fish, Jiang Hai smiled. This was a good start, so he asked for the third kind of fish. However, Minister Qin couldn't help but frown when he heard this fish. Because he knew that although this fish was expensive, it was not easy to sell this kind of fish, because this fish was a protected animal. Well, I can think of a way, but it's impossible to buy it by quantity. At most, we can sell it by the strips. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Minister Qin hesitated and said to Jiang Hai. Hearing what he said, Jiang Hai nodded. He knew that selling by the strips was not a bad idea. Looking at Minister Qin, Jiang Hai asked in a low voice, "How many can you get?" "At most 10. Let me see. If possible, I'll make a population for you." Minister Qin listened to Jiang Hai's words and carefully replied, "Gather a population, this is also an insider's word. Because if a population wants to reproduce, without 3 generations of inbreeding, it needs at least 4 pairs." Hearing his words, Jiang Hai nodded. 8 is 8, it's better than none. Seeing that Jiang Hai agreed, Minister Qin smiled and immediately left. He still has to report this incident to the imperial court. The Arabian side is willing to sell oil, this is good news. Seeing that Minister Qin left, Jiang Hai also smiled. Just when he was about to eat something again, he noticed a figure sneaking into the venue. Seeing this figure, Jiang Hai smiled and greeted him. "Is it done?" Walking to the side of the figure, Jiang Hai whispered to the man wearing a waiter's uniform. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, this person froze for a moment, then raised his head and laughed self-deprecatingly. As expected of the boss. "You can still recognize me even though I look like this?" Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Azalina's slightly cold voice came from under this completely different appearance. At this time, Azalina didn't look like a woman, not even an Asian. If one looked at her face, they would at most think that she was a handsome young man. She had black eyes, a nose that wasn't as straight, a sharp jaw, and slightly yellow skin. She was about 1.75 meters tall and looked very thin. Her chest was also very flat, and she had a moving Adam's apple. No one would treat her as a woman. However, Jiang Hai was able to see through her disguise at a glance. This was because anyone who was used to eating the meat in his manner would have a familiar aura around them. When he felt this aura, he immediately knew who this person was. Of course, people who only ate a few meals or even a dozen meals wouldn't have this aura. Only people who ate every day would have this aura, because this aura was so little that it was hard to notice if one didn't eat every day. Of course, Jiang Hai wouldn't tell Azalina how he found her. It was very cool to maintain a little mystery in front of his subordinates, so Jiang Hai just glanced at her and said indifferently, "It's been solved. On the way back, I'll invite the boss to watch a free fireworks show." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Azalina chuckled and said slowly to Jiang Hai. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai also laughed. Looking at the three people who were standing there and trying to integrate into the other circles, Jiang Hai's eyes became cold. At this time, Qili also noticed Jiang Hai and walked over from a distance. In just half an hour, Qili was holding a thick stack of business cards in her hand. To be honest, she was originally in the same position as the Yin family. It was impossible for them to participate in such a banquet, let alone be the main character. This time, the reason why Qili became the main character in these people's eyes and tried to give her business cards was mainly because of one person, Jiang Hai. Among the people present, except for Qili, the Yin family, and Azalina, no one knew who Jiang Hai was. But everyone only knew that Jiang Hai had a relationship with Minister Qin of the Ministry of State Security. At the same time, Jiang Hai was also friends with the organizer of this banquet, Du Feynman Muhammad bin Rashid Al Maktoum. One was a high-level official of the imperial court, and the other was a rich man in the Middle East. Being friends with these two people was worth more than 10,000 ordinary rich people and ordinary officials. It was a bit presumptuous to go directly to Jiang Hai, because they didn't know Jiang Hai's name. But it was easy to find Qili. Although the cheese group was not qualified, at least they knew about it. First, he would get to know Qili. Then, he would give her his business card. As for whether it would reach Jiang Hai's ears, that would be another story. "Phew, I kind of regret coming with you. I've become your secretary." Seeing Qili come over, Azalina deliberately left first to avoid trouble. Qili came to Jiang Hai's side. She really didn't recognize Azalina, but stuffed the stack of business cards into Jiang Hai's hand. Jiang Hai just glanced at it casually. This pile of business cards was really interesting. This was a company director, and this was a department director. Yes, department director. People at the department level were definitely not qualified to come to this banquet. And this so-called department was a department with the word state, not a department in the capital. There was a lot of knowledge in this. If this was a book about business or official career, it would be obvious. These business cards would definitely be very useful in the future, but unfortunately, the main theme of this book was leisure and farming. So these things were really useless. Jiang Hai glanced at the stack of business cards and stuffed them into his pocket. Looking at Jiang Hai's action, regardless of whether Jiang Hai would look at them in the future, at least he accepted them now. This was a good sign for these people. Hearing Qili's complaint, Jiang Hai smiled and said to Qili, "You don't have to accept them if you don't want to." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qili couldn't help but smile, and then looked at Jiang Hai with sparkling eyes. "Do you think I'm you? I still have to make a living in China. How about I find a professional manager and then go to the United States with you?" "Ugh, hee hee." But hearing her words, Jiang Hai was terrified. If they were really husband and wife, then she didn't want to come. Jiang Hai had to let her come. But the problem now was that there was some trouble between them. Look at how scared you are. For the time being. I won't go. Seeing Jiang Hai's reaction, Qi Li sighed. It seemed that she still didn't do well enough. But she also knew that she had hurt Jiang Hai's heart before. Now it wasn't so easy to get it back. She had to work hard for this. Chapter 438. Miss Dale. Sitting on the windowsill of the hotel, Delina looked at Penelope Dale, who was cleaning up dinner over there, and said softly. Hearing her words, Penelope couldn't help but raise her head and look at the little girl in front of her. Because Jiang Hai, Azalina, and Qi Li all went to Du Feimin's banquet, Penelope and the others had to deal with dinner by themselves. Fortunately, Jiang Hai left them a lot of money, and there was also a lot of money for the room. Whether they went out to eat or ate in the hotel, there was no problem. Of course, Delina and Marian wanted to go out to eat. They were now very curious about the country where Jiang Hai was born. However, Penelope was not at ease, so in the end, they still ate in the hotel. They didn't even go to the restaurant, but asked someone to send them food. Fortunately, the food here was also good, and the three of them were very happy. After dinner, Penelope was cleaning up, while Delina and Marian sat in the distance, playing with their mobile phones or looking out of the window. Suddenly, Delina asked Penelope, which attracted the attention of the three people in the room. Just call me Penelope, Delina, what's the matter? Listening to Delina's words, Penelope Dale smiled and continued to clean up in front of her with her head down. The relationship between the surname and first name of Americans was similar to that of Chinese people. Although it was the first name and the last name, generally speaking, people who were not very familiar with each other would call each other by their surname, such as Boss Zhang, Teacher Wang, Master Lu, and so on. In the United States, people who were not very familiar with each other would call each other by their surname instead of their first name. For example, basketball stars, Michael Jordan, were basically called Jordan, and Shaquille O'Neal, were all called O'Neal. Except for Kobe Bryant, basically 99% of basketball stars were called by their surname instead of their first name. Only people who were close to each other could call each other by their first name. Now, for example, Penelope had already regarded Delina and Marian as friends, so she took the initiative to call them by their first name. She could omit the last name. Alright, Penelope, how old are you this year? Looking at Penelope, Daliana asked in puzzlement. Me? I'm 4 years younger than your dad. I'm already 24 this year. Hearing her words, Penelope smiled and said. Oh, then it seems that you're not much older than us. Hearing her words, Daliana raised her head and said seriously. It seems like I should be happy to hear that, Penelope said after hearing Daliana's words. Hee, it's all right. You're indeed not much older than us. You probably don't know what I want to ask. Daliana smiled brightly when she saw Penelope's grateful expression. Then, she said helplessly. Tell me about it. Although I'm not that much older than you, I've experienced more than you, so I can understand most things, Penelope said with a smile when she saw Daliana's vexed look. That's true, but I want to ask you something. You can't tell anyone about it. Do you know what to do? After hesitating for a few moments, Daliana looked at Penelope and asked curiously. Do? Ugh, why are you asking this? Upon hearing Daliana's words, Penelope was stunned. I'm just curious. Don't think that I don't know anything. I'm already 17 years old this year. According to Hua Xia, I'm already 18 years old. It's not like you don't know where I used to live. In the past, I've seen those older sisters doing that. But back then, they seemed to be in great pain. They screamed miserably, knitted their brows, and sometimes even bled. That made me afraid of that. Daliana said with knitted brows. Upon hearing her words, Marian also walked over and held Daliana's hand. As for Penelope, she also felt a little awkward. Indeed, these two girls couldn't be treated like ordinary high school students. That's why, in order to prevent my younger sister and I from walking down the same path, I learned that in order to earn enough remuneration through labor. But it was also because of this that I met Jiang Hai and lived such a good life now. Looking at her younger sister's expression, Daliana chuckled. That was all in the past. Now, she had almost forgotten about the hellish life she had led. But a while ago, I went to peek at Jiang Hai doing that and realized that something was amiss. The pain and numbness in the past couldn't be seen on the faces of Jiang Hai and his opponents. Instead, they seemed to be enjoying it. This made me a little confused. Why is there such a huge difference when it's the same thing? Speaking until here, Daliana couldn't help but raise her head and look at Penelope. In fact, this doubt had appeared in her heart for a long time. They had peeked at Jiang Hai more than once. Jiang Hai and Ai Xiaoxi, Jiang Hai and Feng Yunchen, Jiang Hai, Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi, and even Jiang Hai and Afra that night. But the more they peeked at him, the stranger they felt. This doubt had always existed in their hearts. After all, no one taught them this kind of lesson. They wanted to ask because SH20 Clive was the best teacher. But they also knew that there was something between SH20 Clive and Jiang Hai that couldn't be explained clearly. They still wanted SH20 Clive to be their mother. If they said that, then this matter would probably be ruined. As for Feng Yunchen, Afra, and Ai Xiaoxi, they were a little embarrassed. After all, they were the ones who peeked at them. Daliana and the others also didn't know what to say. After all, they were very clear about the thoughts of these women. They couldn't wait to strip themselves naked and send themselves to Jiang Hai's bed. As for the others, they were Jiang Hai's subordinates, so they didn't dare to ask. That's why they held back for so long. After coming here, they met an outsider, Penelope. This is indeed hard to say. But what you saw before should be those bad guys who forced the girls to do it. They didn't have any feelings for each other and didn't have any foreshadowing. Therefore, they might feel a lot of pain in their hearts. But in order to live, they could only accept such things. As for the Jiang Hai you saw later, they should be willing to do it. Both of them were in love with each other and had mutual respect for each other. Therefore, when they did it, they felt comfortable. It's like learning. If you are willing to learn, then you will naturally learn very smoothly and quickly. But if you are not willing to learn, then learning will be very difficult. You will feel like a day is like a year. Hearing Delina's words, Penelope's face couldn't help but turn red. But she also knew that someone should teach them this matter, so that they wouldn't be hurt in the future. If that happened, it would be too late. So although she was a little shy, she still said slowly. It's just that the example she gave later, it's a matter of opinion. In fact, Penelope herself was also an exception, because she also didn't experience it. In the United States, 80% of girls will lose their thing before entering college. Among the remaining 20%, more than 15% will lose their thing because of their family's religion. For example, they believe in Catholicism. More strict families naturally won't allow this. Among the remaining 5%, 40% is because they are too ugly, and the remaining 1% is Penelope. Both of them are in love with each other? Just like us and Jiang Hai? Hearing Penelope's words, Marian interrupted and asked at this time. You are not, you are father and daughter. But hearing Marian's words, Penelope immediately shook her head. But we don't treat him as a father. He is not much older than us. Hearing her words, Daliana also said immediately. Looking at the two of them with golden eyes, Penelope couldn't help but shake her head. It seems, it's going to be bad. You don't treat him as a father, but he treats you as his daughter. Don't make a fuss, you are just a combination of gratitude and worship, that's not love. After thinking about it, in order to avoid a possible tragedy, Penelope said seriously. She didn't know why, but when Daliana and Marian said that they liked Jiang Hai, she was a little anxious. Really? Hearing Penelope's words, Daliana and Marian looked at each other. They were also a little confused. But in their hearts, they made a decision at the same time. Although they don't know whether their feelings for Jiang Hai are a combination of worship and gratitude, they want to see if Jiang Hai really feels like a daughter to them, like Penelope said. Achoo! At this time, Jiang Hai, who was eating Yangtze River grenadier fish, suddenly sneezed, and then pinched his nose in confusion. Achoo! At this time, Jiang Hai, who was eating Yangtze River grenadier fish, suddenly sneezed, and then pinched his nose in confusion. Have you caught a cold? Watching Jiang Hai, Qi Li, who was sitting beside him, couldn't help but ask in a low voice. To be honest, Qi Li was very happy at this banquet. Because Jiang Hai was sitting beside her, nobody dared to glance at her like a wolf like before, nobody dared to talk about her behind her back, not to mention find her trouble. How comfortable it was to have a man to rely on. Pitifully, she didn't know that before. Now that she thought about it, she was really too silly at that time. Now that she heard Jiang Hai sneeze, she asked anxiously, as if a small cold was a serious illness. At this moment, she began to imagine Jiang Hai falling sick and lying on the bed. She would take care of him, wipe the juice on him, feed him medicine, and warm him up if he was too cold. Of course, it wouldn't be a normal warmth, but two people. Hee. No. But it was a pity that Jiang Hai wouldn't let her take care of him, because he wouldn't fall sick at all. How could they fall sick when they were both at the limit of their bodies? Therefore, he was just a little confused. Why did he sneeze? Sir, did you add too much pepper? At this moment, the chef in front of him was stunned for a moment before asking. It's okay, this is the best flavor. Hearing the chef's words, Jiang Hai suddenly realized that it might be because of this. Chapter 439. What a shameless couple. Looking at Jiang Hai and Qi Li in the distance, and Zhangwu, who was sitting in the corner, gritted his teeth with hatred. Originally, they were giving out business cards and preparing to get to know these people, so they didn't have much time and leisure to deal with Jiang Hai. However, when he finished giving out business cards, these people didn't want to take the family to have fun. They had nothing to do and were reluctant to leave. At this time, they could only turn their attention to other things. There were only 3 highlights of this banquet. First, food, drink, and social interaction. For example, the family didn't lack food and drink, but no one was willing to take them to have fun. They couldn't stick to them, because it would be annoying, so Zhangwu could only turn his attention to other places. As soon as he turned his attention, he saw Jiang Hai and Qi Li. At this time, the two were sitting in front of teppanyaki and eating happily. Jiang Hai liked to eat Yangtze River grenadier fish very much, because this fish tasted really good, but there was a problem. This fish had too many bones. If it was roasted too crispy, it would lose the taste of fish, and the loss would outweigh the gain. If it wasn't roasted too crispy, although it had the taste of fish, there would be too many bones. Maybe they could tell that Jiang Hai liked to eat it. On this side, Qi Li had been sitting beside Jiang Hai, picking out the bones on the fish for Jiang Hai. She picked out the bones one by one, even if they were burrs. After picking out the meat, she gave it to Jiang Hai to eat. Looking at Qi Li's virtuous appearance, Zhangwu really hated her. He felt that his teeth were itching, and he felt that his face was turning green. Zhangwu really liked Qi Li. Even now, the relationship between the two families had reached this point, he still liked Qi Li very much. After the Qi Li family's accident, he was really sad and decadent for more than a year. He didn't come out until Zhangyong asked him to. After being rejected by Qi Li again and again, he thought that he would forget her, but he found that he couldn't. Even when he went out to have fun, he had to find a woman who looked like Qi Li. Compared to him and Jiang Hai, his heart was now even more sour. When he was with Qi Li, he really treated Qi Li like a queen. When Lu Li ate melon seeds, he had to use his fingers to pull them out because Qi Li, who used his teeth, found it dirty. When he ate crab with Qi Li, he had to take out all the meat himself, and the appearance of the crab had to be kept intact. Otherwise, Chili wouldn't eat it. He was the one who picked out the bones when eating fish, and he was the one who carried the bags when going out. Even if she cooked at home, he still had to do the cooking, tidy up, and wash the dishes. In his world, Chili was a queen. She was an emperor, and he had to serve her well. Even so, the two of them eventually developed to the point where they could hold hands when going out on the street. That was all. But now, what did he see? Chili carried her bag by herself, and Chili picked out the fish for Jiang Hai. She took the initiative to carry the food for Jiang Hai. She even cleaned up the leftovers of Jiang Hai's food. Even so, she took the initiative to stick to Jiang Hai and brazenly let Jiang Hai have a mistress. Was this still the Chili he knew? Was Chili crazy? The more he looked, the more he thought, the angrier he became. Why? Why did the woman he loved the most turn into the woman he desired the most in someone else's arms? Now, from the inside to the outside, she was the woman who would only appear in his dreams. But now, this woman had nothing to do with him. Oh, no, it was not that she had nothing to do with him. She was his enemy. He wanted to stab his enemy to death. It was not hatred born from love, but pure hatred. There was nothing else mixed in. At a certain moment, Zhanghu's heart tightened for no reason, and then he felt a sharp pain. Bang! Carelessly, Zhanghu knocked over a plate next to him. The sound of the plate shattering attracted the attention of the people around him. However, when they saw that Zhanghu's face was ashen and his body was sweating, they were all stunned. Zhanghu, how is Zhanghu? Seeing this, Zhangyong and Ndishuan rushed over first. Looking at their son and brother, the two of them were a little anxious. They patted his face and asked in a low voice. It should be an acute heart attack. Let's go to the hospital first. At this time, the doctor in charge of the villa also rushed over. After giving Zhangwu 2 tablets of nitroglycerin, he immediately said to Zhangyong and Zhangshuan in front of him. Let's go. Although he was a little reluctant to leave the banquet, his son's life was more valuable. So after Zhangwu sighed, he smiled at the people around him. The two of them carried Zhangwu, who could no longer speak, out of the villa. When Zhangwu walked out of the villa, Jiang Hai and Chili also noticed the movement there. They should not be able to see the sun tomorrow. Although she did not know how Jiang Hai arranged it, with her understanding of Jiang Hai, Chili knew that Jiang Hai would definitely make a move. She could not help but whisper. What? Are you distressed? If you are distressed, you can stop them now, and they will not die. Hearing Chili's words, Jiang Hai said indifferently while eating fish. Of course, these words were a little harsh. What are you talking about? Really, I'm distressed for my dad. I'm distressed that he didn't see them die with his own eyes. Turning her head and rolling her eyes at Jiang Hai, Chili said hatefully while cleaning up the fish. The trace of pity in her original words had long disappeared. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also shrugged. For these people, directly killing them was the easiest thing to do. Watching these 3 people leave, Azalina, who had been hiding in the villa, also unknowingly left. 5 minutes later, the taxi under the surveillance in the distance finally had a tow truck, and the chubby driver also came over. After negotiating with the tow truck driver for a while, the tow truck was towed away. On the other side, Zhangwu, Zhangyong, and Zhangshuan also got in their own car. After they gave the order, Jiang Rui, who actually came tonight, started the engine. In fact, to be honest, after they learned that Jiang Hai had returned, they were also afraid that Jiang Hai would fight to the death. In case Jiang Hai wanted to deal with them, Jiang Rui, a former mercenary, could help them. However, if Jiang Hai didn't want to make a move in the villa, then there was no need to use Jiang Rui. Therefore, Jiang Rui only played the role of a driver today. If Jiang Hai knew that he could eliminate 4 of his enemies today, he would really laugh in his dreams. After starting the engine, the car slowly drove away from the villa's parking lot and rushed in the direction of the city. "Dad, why don't you go back? This kind of opportunity is very rare." Clutching his chest, Zhangwu, who felt a little better, looked at Zhangxuan sitting next to him, hesitated for a moment, and whispered. "What nonsense are you talking about? How long can your dad live? This company will belong to you two brothers sooner or later. For me, you two are the most important. Don't talk, wait until we get checked out in the hospital." Hearing Zhangwu's words, Zhangxuan glanced at him, then showed a slightly gratified smile on his face, and said to Zhangwu. Listening to his father's words, Zhangwu couldn't help but raise his head. This meant that he didn't want to let his tears fall. He suddenly felt that he was so stupid. For a woman who had a change of heart, he was so sad. But now he understood that in the future, he was only Zhangwu, and Qi Li was only his enemy. He would definitely make Qi Li and Jiang Hai regret it. But unfortunately, he might not be able to see that day. The car was driving faster and faster, and the distance between them and the city was getting shorter and shorter, but they didn't notice that the water temperature seemed to be a little wrong. At this moment, a thin layer of something similar to a sugar coating in the water tank was gradually melting under the gradually hot water. When the water melted this layer of sugar coating, the cesium in the sugar coating also came into contact with the water. Bang! With a loud sound, the cesium and the water came into contact, and at the same time, hydrogen was produced, and it exploded. After hearing a loud noise, thick smoke instantly came out from the front cover of the car. The entire car was no longer under control at this time. Among the four people in the car, Zhangxuan, Zhangwu, and Zhangyong were all stunned. He immediately grabbed the armrest next to him, and Zhangwu's face seemed to be even more ugly. But fortunately, Jiang Rui was here at this time. Although Jiang Rui had no way to stop the car, after all, the brakes had failed, he still controlled the car to crash into the strongest section of the barrier next to him. This meant that he wanted to forcibly stop the car. Only a bang sound was heard, and the car hit the barrier heavily. After all, this car was also a car that cost hundreds of thousands. After hitting the car, the airbag would naturally pop out. Instead, it was a ball of flame. It didn't give Jiang Rui any time to react at all. The flame had already engulfed the four people in the car with an incomparable momentum in an instant. At this moment, Jiang Hai's phone also vibrated. He saw that an unfamiliar number had sent him a photo. The photo was of the car that caught fire. After deleting the photo, Jiang Hai put the phone back into his pocket. His originally gloomy face also became better at this time. The matter that had been tormenting him for so long was finally solved. When the fire truck and the police arrived, there were only 4 charred bodies left in the car. As for the reason why the car lost control and caught fire, the preliminary judgment was that the water temperature was too high, so the car overheated. At the same time, it caused the brakes to fail and hit the barrier. Because the car's internal combustion engine leaked out, it caused the fire, which caused the car to catch fire. However, logically speaking, even if the car caught fire, there should be about a buffer of about 10 minutes. But why didn't the 4 people in the car escape during this time? This made the police very puzzled. Chapter 440. According to the latest news received by this station, at about 22:13 last night, a Ford sedan was driving at the entrance to the city. When the water temperature passed the threshold, the brakes failed, causing a car accident and causing the car to spontaneously combust. All 4 people in the car were killed. The relevant departments remind everyone who is driving to check the data of the car before driving. Don't be in a hurry to drive and repeat the same mistake. Jiang Hai chuckled as he watched the news broadcasters from the Yuehun tribe report on the TV. This thing was not something that could be solved by careful inspection. However, it did not matter. As long as these guys were dealt with, Jiang Hai's mood would be much better. It seemed that accepting Azalina was really something to be happy about. After returning last night, Jiang Hai washed up and went to bed. However, he did not know that the imperial capital was in turmoil at this time. However, the shock subsided in the morning. When he got up and turned on the TV in the morning, he saw this news. 3 people from the Andersons all died last night. Now the Andersons are in a mess. Several major directors, as well as Anderson's wife, nephew, and niece, are all fighting for control of the Andersons. Our Chile group has also eaten up a lot of their family property in one go. Are you interested in taking a share? Pushing open the door, Chile walked in excitedly. In this world, there were only 3 things that could make her happy. The first was Jiang Hai, the second was attacking the Andersons, and the third was making money by doing business. Now that Jiang Hai helped her attack the Andersons to make money, these 3 things were put together. She could not be unhappy. Forget about me. Do you think the people in the imperial court are stupid? Someone must have contacted them. This matter may have something to do with me. Although there is no specific evidence, if I go too far, wouldn't it be like confessing without being pressed? Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai shook his head. He did not have the intention to buy domestic shares or anything. There was no way to manage it, and it would be easy to attract hatred. This was also the reason why, even if he had so much money in the United States, he did not invest in the financial industry. Firstly, it was too dangerous. Secondly, it was too high profile. He preferred to make a fortune in silence. The rest had nothing to do with him. That's true. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li, who was originally a little tempted, couldn't help but calm down. She knew even less than Jiang Hai what the imperial court was like and how powerful it was. Now, the imperial court had chosen to cover up this matter. If she and Jiang Hai didn't know when to back off, the imperial court would fall out with them in the end. It was fine for Jiang Hai. After all, his foundation was abroad, but the Qi enterprise would definitely suffer. Thinking of this, Qi Li called back to the company and asked the people in the company to be more reserved. If anything happened, the company should not be implicated. Is there anywhere you want to go today? Now that we have solved the problem on our minds, we can have fun. Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li sat next to Jiang Hai and deliberately sat very close to him. If it weren't for the fear of scaring Jiang Hai, she would have directly sat in Jiang Hai's arms. After this incident, her feelings for Jiang Hai became deeper and deeper. Women admired those who could make them feel powerful. Jiang Hai was like this. Jiang Hai could raise cows and earn more than $1 billion a year. Jiang Hai's fighting ability could subdue mountain lions. Jiang Hai's subordinates could take care of the Yin family. In Qi Li's eyes, how could she have been so blind to not see Jiang Hai's shining point? How could she have pushed away a man who could make money, have a strong body, and give people the greatest sense of security? Thinking of this, Qi Li really felt that she was really blinded by hatred. She didn't catch such a good man. Now, if she wanted to catch him again, it seemed that there were many enemies. Play. I really don't know. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment, then he touched his chin and said. Jiang Hai was telling the truth. He really didn't know what to play. In fact, almost all the tourist cities in China were like this. There were some scenic spots that people didn't want to go a second time after they had been there, such as the imperial capital. If it weren't for accompanying others, Jiang Hai wouldn't have wanted to go to places like the Forbidden City, the Temple of Heaven, and the like. After all, he was just a tourist, not a person who studied these things, so he wasn't so crazy about these things. You have been to the Forbidden City, the Temple of Heaven, the Bird's Nest, and the Yi Garden and the Old Summer Palace, and the Great Wall. You don't want to go shopping, so where should we go? Hearing that Jiang Hai didn't know where to go, Qi Li also sat there and thought about it, but to be honest, Qi Li had lived in the imperial capital for many years. But she really didn't know what to play in the imperial capital, because when she was young, she basically went to the park and was very happy to go to the amusement park. Later, when she was in university, she didn't stay in China. Less than a year after she came back from university, something happened to her family. Then she worked crazily until now. Now that she had her revenge, and with Jiang Hai accompanying her, she wanted to relax and play with Jiang Hai. But the problem was that she didn't know where to play, because she had been to the places that Jiang Hai had been to, and she had also been to the places that Jiang Hai hadn't been to. She naturally hadn't been to the places that Jiang Hai hadn't been to. Why don't we ask Feng Yunshan? This guy should be very familiar with the imperial capital. After thinking for a long time, Qili still couldn't figure out where to go to play. She hesitated for a moment, then she said to Jiang Hai. Her. Although Jiang Hai was a dull person, he wasn't stupid. He could see that Qili was interested in him, and he and Feng Yunshan, well, speaking of this relationship, there was also some entanglement. Originally, if Qili wasn't here today, then Jiang Hai might call her, but now that Qili was here, Jiang Hai was a little overwhelmed, not to mention that it was proposed by Qili. What? Are you done playing with her? Seeing Jiang Hai's slightly awkward expression, Qili was still very gratified. At least this proved that Jiang Hai cared about her thoughts, but now what she wanted to do most was to please Jiang Hai, and other things didn't matter for the time being. Because she knew that although Feng Yunshan and Jiang Hai had such a relationship, she couldn't become Jiang Hai's wife. Having such an informant was not a bad thing for Qili. Ai. What are you talking about? Hearing Qili's words, Jiang Hai was even more embarrassed. If you aren't tired, then sit and wait. Seeing Jiang Hai's awkward look, Qili laughed, picked up the phone, and dialed a number on it. After a few rings, the phone was picked up. Hello, Feng Yunshan, Jiang Hai is now in the hotel's XX building, XX suite. I'll give you half an hour to dress up, or we'll go out and play. We won't wait for you. Listening to Feng Yunshan on the other side of the phone, Qili on the other side was already talking like a machine gun. Then, without waiting for Feng Yunshan to answer, she directly hung up the phone. Just after Qili hung up the phone, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi, who were driving to work at this time, instantly turned the steering wheel and rushed directly to the hotel. They ran 3 red lights along the way. Not to mention half an hour, it didn't even take 20 minutes. Jiang Hai's doorbell had already rung. When he opened the door, Jiang Hai saw the figures of Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi. Looking at the 2 beautiful women in front of him, and the 2 beautiful women also looked at the embarrassed Jiang Hai in front of them. The anger in their eyes was even more intense. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai was even more embarrassed. You bastard, you didn't even call us when you returned to China. Who do you think we are? The 2 women looked at Jiang Hai. Ai Xiaoxi just felt a little sad. She felt that she seemed to have a relatively low position in Jiang Hai's heart. He didn't call her when he returned to China, and Feng Yunshan directly yelled, pointing at Jiang Hai and shouting. Let's talk about it inside the house. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was so embarrassed that his cancer was about to act up. What was this? No, we still have to go to work after scolding you. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan on the other side also shouted loudly. Hey, you guys come back first. It's not what you think, otherwise, I wouldn't have called you. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai didn't know what to say, but Qili stood up at this time and said to the 2 women in front of her. Hearing Qili's words, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi also glanced at Jiang Hai and then walked in. But when they went in, they didn't sit down, but stood at the door and looked at Jiang Hai coldly. Don't be so bitter and hateful. Jiang Hai didn't call you for your own good. After all, Jiang Hai's return this time is very dangerous. Looking at the 2 of them, to be honest, Qili couldn't help but be happy. Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi were taking advantage of this opportunity to break up with Jiang Hai. However, she also knew that this was impossible. So sometimes, it was better to say it herself than Jiang Hai saying it to them in the future. Therefore, she opened her mouth first. Then Qili roughly talked about the purpose of Jiang Hai's return this time. After listening to Qi Li's words, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi didn't relax, but walked directly to Jiang Hai and looked at Jiang Hai angrily. You didn't even tell us such a big thing. If something happened to you, do you want us to live as widows? Feng Yunshan pinched Jiang Hai fiercely, and said to Jiang Hai with a face full of anger. The fierce character of a northeastern girl is not ordinary. And Ai Xiaoxi is not bad. Not only did she pinch Jiang Hai, but she also deliberately glanced at Jiang Hai. This guy really doesn't know how to cherish himself. But after pinching, she carefully looked at Jiang Hai, fearing that he would be hurt. Okay, don't be mushy. You don't take me seriously. Don't worry, your Jiang Hai is fine. Everything was done by his subordinates. Looking at the appearance of these two, Qi Li said angrily. Subordinates? Bell Lester? Hearing Qi Li's words, Feng Yunshan couldn't help but ask with some doubts. Hey, boss, where are we going to play today? But at this moment, the door was opened again, and Azalina walked in excitedly, and when she saw Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi, the three of them couldn't help but be stunned. Chapter 441. The Imperial Capital. There are a lot of places to play, but there are not many that you are interested in. Sitting on the sofa in Jiang Hai's suite, Feng Yunshan looked at Jiang Hai and said seriously because she had just mentioned a lot of places, but they were all rejected by Jiang Hai. In fact, the Imperial Capital was a large city in China. Not only were there scenic spots, but there were also many places to play. In addition to the scenic spots such as the Forbidden City, the Great Wall, the Old Summer Palace, and the Bird's Nest, there were actually many places to play. For example, Happy Valley could be played, Dongdan, Xidan, and Wang's Mansion could be shopped. There were many aquariums, zoos, and various parks in the imperial capital, such as Hohai, Shikahai, Xiangshan, and a series of other scenic spots. They were all very good, but unfortunately, Jiang Hai was not willing to go. When it came to shopping, how could the imperial capital be cheaper and better than New York? He couldn't see the aquariums and zoos in the United States. What's more, the species of animals in his manor may not be less than those in zoos. The coral reef in the aquarium was enough to beat any aquarium in the country. Even if it was any aquarium in the world, Jiang Hai would not be afraid. So after talking for a long time, Jiang Hai was not willing to go to these places to play. As for the 30-mile village that Feng Yunshan mentioned, Jiang Hai didn't even have the slightest interest in it. The place he hated the most was nightclubs. What's more, it was daytime now, so after talking for a while, Feng Yunshan was a little speechless because it seemed that Jiang Hai didn't like anything. Then, Jiang Hai, what are you interested in? Go to the place you're interested in. Just as Feng Yunshan was worried, Ai Xiaoxi couldn't help but interrupt, but after listening to her words, the other people in the room looked at her strangely. This made her wonder. Why are they looking at me like this? Did I say something wrong? You have been with him for a while. Don't you know that this guy is only interested in eating? Glancing at Ai Xiaoxi, Feng Yunshan took the initiative to speak. Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai also laughed. Indeed, he was a person who did not care much about other things. The thing he cared about the most in his life was eating. But there really isn't anything good to eat in the capital. Ai Xiaoxi muttered softly as she curled her lips. Indeed, although the imperial capital was called the imperial capital, there really wasn't much specialty food. Speaking of the imperial capital, other than pastries, the two most delicious things were the imperial capital roast duck and the hot pot. But when it came to authentic instant boiled mutton, it had to be Mang Nei. Roast duck was too greasy and couldn't be eaten in the morning. Moreover, Jiang Hai and the others had already eaten it. It was indeed not suitable to eat too much of it. Other than that, there were all kinds of small pastries. What? There were also some specialty food. Ugh, although Jiang Hai liked to eat the specialty food of the imperial capital, to be honest, he personally was not used to eating it. For example, he couldn't eat braised food. Soy milk was even worse. He didn't like to eat fried liver. The same was true for Jiaochuan. He didn't eat fried chicken ****, sesame tofu, so except for some pastries that could be bought all over the world, such as rolling donkey in Sakima, the imperial capital was really not a place to eat delicious food in his eyes. Of course, in the future, Jiang Hai would understand that Huaxia was indeed a world of food, but most of the cuisines belonged to the local region. The things that were delicious for the locals were really not used to eating when foreigners came. For example, Jiangsu and Zhejiang cuisines, Shanghai cuisines, Cantonese cuisines. According to Jiang Hai's taste, he was more used to eating Shandong, Sichuan, and Hunan cuisines. However, among these three cuisines, those who couldn't eat salty food couldn't eat Shandong cuisine, those who couldn't eat spicy food couldn't eat Sichuan cuisine, and those who couldn't eat pure spicy food couldn't eat Hunan cuisine. Therefore, the difference was really big. Now in the imperial capital, Jiang Hai and the others didn't know what to eat. Of course, they didn't know where to go to play. For a while, they just sat in the room awkwardly. Bang, bang, bang. Just as Jiang Hai and the others were watching TV awkwardly and thinking about where to go to play, there was a knock on the door. Jiang Hai opened the door and saw that the person outside was none other than Minister Qin. As soon as he saw Minister Qin, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment, but Minister Qin laughed. "Brother Jiang, thank you so much for last night. If it weren't for you, the imperial court might have been in trouble this time. I still have to say that you helped. Today, I told the imperial court about this matter, and the imperial court sent someone over to talk about it. Mr. Du Feimin has already agreed. We're talking now." As soon as he saw Jiang Hai, Minister Qin laughed and said. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also laughed. How was this his idea? It was Du Feimin's intention to sell it. However, he lacked an excuse, and Jiang Hai was the most important excuse. However, for this reason, he also extorted 600 million yuan of oil futures from Du Feimin. Of course, he wanted more than this. This time, after plundering in Huaxia, he planned to go to South America and the Caribbean. Those sunken ships would rust if they stayed under the sea, so he might as well give them to himself. As long as everything is going well, come in and sit down. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai naturally didn't say much. He chuckled and motioned for Minister Qin to come in and sit down. However, when Minister Qin saw the room full of women, he was a little surprised. He really didn't expect that Jiang Hai's usual style would be so open. How long did he delay? So many people, brother, is there anything you need? If there's something, I'll take my leave first. Let's talk when we have time. Looking at the people in the room, Minister Qin smiled at Jiang Hai and then said to him. Oh, there's nothing to do now. Originally, we wanted to go out today, but we didn't know where to go. I've visited all the scenic spots. Minister Qin also knows that I'm in Boston in the United States, which is very close to New York, so I don't want to go to the shopping malls in China. I'm not interested in the zoo, parks, amusement parks, and so on. I feel that nightclubs are very noisy and I don't like them, so now I'm a little hesitant and don't know where to go. Hearing Minister Qin's words, Jiang Hai shook his head and said with a smile. He was telling the truth, because he really didn't know where to go. Oh. Then what are you interested in? Upon hearing Jiang Hai's words, Minister Qin couldn't help but frown. According to what Jiang Hai said, there really wasn't any place to play. Eating. Looking at Minister Qin, Jiang Hai said his hobby with a little embarrassment. Eating? Eating is good, but it's not the time to eat now. How about this, I'll be the host today, I'll treat you and your sisters-in-law. At noon, we'll go to the Tan family's cuisine, and at night, we'll go to the Li family's cuisine. As for the place to go, how about we go to the Pan Garden now? In the afternoon, I remember that you like those ingredients, right? I have a place that you'll definitely be satisfied with. However, Minister Qin came prepared after all. After hearing Jiang Hai's request, he hesitated for a moment and said directly. Hearing the words sisters-in-law, except for Qi Li, Ai Xiaoxi, and Feng Yunqian, everyone else had some strange expressions on their faces. Azalina didn't care, but Daliana and Marian were very interested. As for Penelope, she was only shy. Now she had no other choice but to pretend that she didn't understand. Tan family's cuisine? Li family's cuisine? Pan garden? After hearing these three nouns, Jiang Hai temporarily forgot to explain this matter, because for a foodie, the first two nouns are too important. He was stunned for a moment, then patted his head. How could he forget these restaurants? Tan family's cuisine and Li family's cuisine are famous official dishes. It is not an exaggeration to say that they imitate the imperial cuisine. For a foodie, the three major private cuisines of Huaxia, Tan family's cuisine, Li family's cuisine, and Kong family's cuisine, are the pinnacle of the culinary world. The most famous one is Kong family's cuisine, but that is in Lu province. Both of these restaurants are in the capital. It would be a pity if he didn't try them in the capital. Why didn't Jiang Hai think of this before? Another place is Pan Garden. Jiang Hai has also heard of it. Of course, he mainly heard about it from movies and TV series. Pan Garden used to be called the Antique Market. It was also the largest antique trading market in the capital. Of course, now there are definitely many fake goods there. Most of them are modern imitations. However, if you don't have the intention of finding treasures, but just going there for a stroll, it is a good place to go. Jiang Hai is not interested in antiques, and so on. But it doesn't matter if you go there. Seeing that Jiang Hai is quite interested, everyone in the room can't help but shrug their shoulders. They just talked about it, but Jiang Hai is not interested. Indeed, it seems that the places that men want to go are indeed not the same as the places that women want to go. However, since Jiang Hai has already decided where he wants to go, they will not stop him. Just like that, everyone has decided on today's itinerary. The people going are Jiang Hai, Minister Qin, Daliana, Marian, Penelope, Azalina, Qi Li, Ai Xiaoxi, and Feng Yunqian. There are a total of 9 people. The car definitely can't fit all of them. Fortunately, Minister Qin was very helpful. After a phone call, a brand new Nissan and a driver arrived in less than 10 minutes. After they got in the car, Minister Qin ordered everyone to leave first and head to the Panjiayuan Old Goods Market. Looking at Minister Qin sitting in front, Jiang Hai's face showed a smile, but he muttered to himself in his heart. This Minister Qin asked me to come today. It's definitely not as simple as just treating me to a meal. After all, this guy is the deputy minister of a top department. Although he is just a deputy, he is not so free as to ask me to make fun of me. However, according to what he said, Du Feimin's side is progressing very well. Why is he looking for me? Although he is a little curious, Jiang Hai decided not to ask anymore. There will be a way when the car gets to the mountain, and the boat will cross the bridge when it gets there. Today, I have to play and eat. There will be a time when he can't hold it in anymore. When he wants to say it, I'll wait and see. P.S. After looking at the book review section, Xiao Fei chuckled. Xiao Fei originally didn't want to write about the country, because there are too many people with fragile hearts. They can't make any jokes. Therefore, when writing about the country, it will inevitably involve some problems with the differences between different places. In the eyes of these people, it is blatant discrimination. You are looking down on the people of that place. Xiao Fei can't say anything about this. Who can control fragile hearts? He likes to think this way. I can't do anything about it. As for writing about other countries, to be honest, there are also people who criticize Xiao Fei for not being patriotic. Xiao Fei has seen all of these before. Some people don't even read the book. They only criticize in the book review section. What can Xiao Fei say? Xiao Fei, who criticizes them, is as uneducated as them. Therefore, Xiao Fei can only ignore them. He will write what he wants to write and post what he wants to post. He can't let them disrupt Xiao Fei's original steps. However, after this section, Xiao Fei tried his best not to write about the country. In this world, there are too many people with fragile hearts and people who stand on the moral high ground. The above is free. Chapter 442. Panjiayuan Old Goods Market. This place was quite famous, whether in novels or in movies and TV series. Generally, people who wanted to find good treasures would come here. It was also the place where a lot of male protagonists in treasure appraisal novels rose to prominence. There was a time when Jiang Hai also liked to read treasure appraisal novels, but later on, some of them were overwritten, so they were mostly the same. Moreover, some people who wrote this kind of novel knew a lot, but there were many people who just followed the trend. They didn't have too much knowledge, so it seemed that sometimes they didn't know as much as the readers. However, it was also because of this that Jiang Hai had a rough idea of how to appraise some antiques. Of course, he only had a rough idea. He could fool people who didn't know anything, but he was far from being an expert. He didn't know anything about the type, dynasty, or color. The only thing he knew was carbon-14, but there was no way to test it. With carbon-14's current age, it couldn't be determined within a few hundred years. Unless he directly took out a bronze from the Shang and Zhou dynasties, he could determine whether it was real or fake. The current mainstream was artifacts from the Ming and Qing dynasties, so it was difficult to determine whether they were real or fake. This could only be done by guessing. Of course, Jiang Hai was just there to shop. He didn't intend to buy these things. Jiang Hai never believed in luck, so he never gambled, nor did he buy lottery tickets. Well, he had bought lottery tickets before, but the most he won was 5 yuan. Buying antiques, buying the lowest price, and so on, he naturally didn't believe in it. Panjiayuan was located on the East Third Ring Road of the imperial capital, so it wasn't very far. If there was no traffic jam, it would take 10 minutes to get there by car. During these 10 minutes, Minister Qin had been telling Jiang Hai the story of this place. In the past, it wasn't called an old goods market, but an antique market. However, the current imperial court had a clear rule about antiques. What was yours was the imperial court's, and what was the imperial court's was still the imperial court's. As long as it was a civilian antique, no one was allowed to buy or sell it privately, no matter if it was a national treasure or not. Because of this, people came here every day to check. Later, perhaps the owner couldn't stand it anymore, so he changed the name to Old Goods Market. You couldn't check a old goods market, right? Old things and second-hand furniture. I can sell them for as much as I want. It has nothing to do with anyone else. As a result, it gradually became a famous antique street, also known as the Street of Liars. The entire Pan Garden covered an area of 48,600 square meters. Of course, it was much smaller than Jiang Hai's manor. It was divided into stalls, ancient buildings, classical furniture, modern collections, stone carvings, and some restaurants. In the past, this might have been a place to trade antiques, but now it had become a scenic spot. There's nothing good sold here now. You can go in and take a look, but it depends on your mood to buy. But it's best if you don't spend more than 100 yuan. After all, our money doesn't grow on trees. We have to be careful. Looking at Jiang Hai and the others, Department Head Qin introduced them with a smile. Indeed, according to what he said. How could a pie fall from the sky so easily? 99% of the things here are fake. If you just like a decoration and play with it, it's not bad, but if you really spend a lot of money and believe it, then it's a big loss. You said that there's no real thing here now. If you want to buy real things, when do you have to come? Hearing Minister Qin's words, Feng Yunshan was also very interested. After all, in her eyes, money is still very important. If she can buy something good with it, it would be great. So after hesitating for a moment, she asked Minister Qin. This pan garden, there's no real goods from Monday to Sunday. The real things are sold in the shop, and the price is also very high. If you want to buy something, the only chance is every Saturday and Sunday morning, when the sun just comes out, that is, around 4 o'clock in the morning. At that time, this is called the ghost market. At that time, there may be some good things. Hearing Feng Yinshan's words, Minister Qin also said with a smile, and when Jiang Hai heard his words, he couldn't help but think of the origin of this ghost market. According to legend, the origin of this ghost market was during the Manchurian Tatar period. At that time, the people in the imperial capital were more or less particular about appearance. When they met, they called each other Lord, and no one was afraid of each other. However, there will always be a time when the family can't survive, so at that time, some people with wealth will sell some of the things in the family, which are some antiques and the like. They are afraid that others will see it, so they cover their faces and come to sell it very early in the morning. No one knows who the buyer and seller are, so it's called the ghost market. Of course, there is another saying, that is, at the end of the years, some Wangya, people in the imperial palace, stole things and sold them here. Naturally, they don't want others to know that they are the ones who sold it. So speaking of it, this is also a kind of culture in the imperial capital. But for the people in the imperial capital, buying things is still at that time. Of course, Jiang Hai and the others are just going to stroll around now. After parking the car, Minister Qin led Jiang Hai and the others into the Pan Garden Old Goods Market. As soon as they walked in, they found that there are really a lot of people here. In addition to a large number of foreigners, there are also many groups of tourists and local young people. After walking in, Jiang Hai found that there were some shops and stalls here. They were really full of dazzling things. Of course, the things outside are more or less some handicrafts, which are not worth much. The really valuable things can only be seen inside. There are Buddha statues, porcelain, bronze, bracelets, Buddhist beads, sky eyes, and so on. Everything is here. As soon as they walked in, Jiang Hai felt his eyes light up. The things here are really complete. In fact, you can buy everything you want here. Seeing Jiang Hai's surprised look, Minister Qin walked over with a smile and said to Jiang Hai. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai nodded. Indeed, the things here are very complete. Out of the parking lot, first is the classical hall, then the modern collection hall, then the first area, the second area, the third area, and the fourth area. The things sold in each area are different. Of course, the most popular place is naturally the open-air street market, which is the place with the most people. Of course, the place that Minister Qin said not to spend more than 100 yuan to buy small things is also here. If it is in those shops, how can there be anything less than 100 yuan? Of course, Jiang Hai and the others are more than just going to take a look. After walking around for a while, everyone bought something. Of course, they were all small toys. For example, Delina, Marion, and the others like some commemorative medals of their ancestors the most. These things are not expensive, and they are very Huaxia style. They bought a lot of them and are going to give them to the people in the manor when they go back. As for Qi Li and the others, they prefer to buy small bracelets. Although they are all fake, they buy them for fun. The most important thing is that the authenticity of the bracelet is not the thing, but the person wearing it is actually the most important thing. For example, if Qi Li wears a gold-plated bracelet, how can people think that it is gold-plated? Their net worth was there for all to see. Even if it was fake, it was real. Hence, they were only buying things for fun. For example, turquoise, obsidian and so on. Penelope is a lawyer. To be honest, she has no interest in these things. Because she is too rational, she doesn't buy anything. Azalina came to Huaxia when she was doing a mission before, so she knows that these things are meaningless. Moreover, she has no interest in these things, so she doesn't buy anything. As the backbone of these people, Jiang Hai actually didn't buy anything because he is not very interested in these things. He just came here to take a look. Of course, it is not that he doesn't like anything. There are some things that he likes, such as furniture. I didn't know that wooden furniture is so valuable. Looking at the set of mahogany furniture, the price is 188,888 yuan. Jiang Hai looked at it and couldn't help but laugh. What kind of toy is this? This is still considered cheap. After all, this is just ordinary mahogany, not fine red sandalwood or yellow rosewood. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Minister Qin also laughed and said, in recent years, the domestic wooden industry has been very popular. The so-called mahogany is not the same as what the average person knows. Mahogany is divided into two families, Leguminosae and Myrmecae. Leguminosae is divided into two subfamilies, Sphenoideae and Hematoxidae, which are further divided into the genera of red sandalwood, yellow sandalwood, and red bean. The Hematoxidae is the iron knife forest, the red sandalwood is divided into red sandalwood, the yellow sandalwood is divided into fragrant wood, black acid wood, and red acid wood. The Hematoxidae and the persimmon are divided into ebony and ebony. In short, if you don't play with these things, it is difficult to understand what these things are and what they represent. Even if they are all yellow rosewood, the price is very different. The price of South China Sea and South Asia Sea is different. There were a lot of twists and turns in this industry. Therefore, there was no fixed price for wood in the country. A piece of wood, you can sell it for 1 million yuan or 1 yuan, it depends on what the person thinks. Looking at the crazy furniture in China, Jiang Hai can't help but whisper, should I go back and get some trees? Just as Jiang Hai and the others were wandering around, suddenly a figure entered Jiang Hai's sight. It's him. Looking at the swaying figure in front of him, Jiang Hai can't help but be surprised. When Jiang Hai looked at that person also saw Jiang Hai and couldn't help but smile. Obviously, he also recognized Jiang Hai. Chapter 443. Hey, brother, what are you doing here? Looking at Jiang Hai, a person walked over with a smile on his face and said with a surprised tone. Oh, I came over to take a look, but why are you here? Hearing the man's words, Jiang Hai replied, and then asked curiously. This is my shop. The man heard Jiang Hai's words and couldn't help but smile and point behind him. As he pointed, Jiang Hai also saw a shop specializing in gems, jade, and the like. Such shops were not rare in the vicinity of Panjiayuan. Jiang Hai saw at least a dozen such shops along the way. But what surprised Jiang Hai was that this fat man said that he was in the jewelry business. Why did he open a shop here? Hey, I usually import raw materials for those big companies, but I also open a small shop to make some money. Maybe he saw the doubts in Jiang Hai's eyes, the fat man said with a smile. Yes, Jiang Hai knows this fat man. This person is not someone else. He is the fat man named Wang Yang who sat next to Jiang Hai when he came back from the plane. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also nodded and looked at his small shop. He is worthy of being a person who can return to Huaxia in the first-class cabin in the United States without batting an eyelid. Although the location of this fat man's shop doesn't seem to be the best, the area of the shop is not small. At a glance, this shop is at least about 300 square meters in size. There are many display counters in this shop. And the things sold in these counters are all gems. Different from some literary objects, he sells hard goods here. Your shop is not small. Looking at the situation inside, Jiang Hai couldn't help but say with some emotion. Hey, it's okay. Come in and sit in the shop. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Wang Yang smiled and led Jiang Hai into the shop. But as soon as they walked in, Jiang Hai's originally smiling face instantly turned into a surprised expression. He was not surprised by Fatty Wang's shop, but he was surprised that since he came to Huaxia, his scales, which had almost stopped growing, suddenly accelerated the speed of condensation, as if the spirit between heaven and earth was constantly drilling into his body. This made him very surprised and he couldn't understand what was going on. Although he wanted to explore it, now was not a good time, so he suppressed the doubts in his heart and walked into the shop with Fatty Wang. But his eyes were constantly scanning the things in the shop. He wanted to see where the spirit came from. You know, Jiang Hai is not short of money now. The only things that can make him so excited are only two things. The first is to protect his property, such as buying oil futures, and the second is to increase his strength. The second-level dragon pattern is already quite amazing. Jiang Hai wants to know what it will be like at the third, fourth, and fifth levels in the future. Now the dragon pattern on his body has changed from a snake to a flood dragon. Will it become a dragon next time? What will a dragon become after that? So as soon as he entered the room, Jiang Hai's eyes swept around. He was really curious. Of course, he was not the only one who was curious. Other people besides Minister Qin were also curious. Women always had no resistance to shiny things. As soon as they walked in, their eyes couldn't leave it. Come, brother. Let me introduce you. Seeing that Jiang Hai was very interested in his things, Wang Yang couldn't help but make a gesture in his heart. He called Jiang Hai in to talk and let Jiang Hai see his things. To put it bluntly, he was a businessman. He wanted to sell jade, and Jiang Hai was a very good customer. Okay. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also smiled because he also wanted to know where the spiritual energy came from. So he followed Fatty Wang to the front of these counters. Fatty Wang's things here were indeed very complete. He immediately introduced them to Jiang Hai. His main focus here was the treasure of the store, naturally the 5 precious gems. Diamond, ruby, sapphire, beryl, and emerald. But the price of these 5 gems was not cheap. A ring made of emerald could be sold for tens of thousands of yuan. Ordinary people couldn't afford it. These things were just used as signboards. The real thing was actually the other 3 gems. Colorful gems, organic gems, and jade. In fact, these 3 gems were the most valuable things here. Come, take a look. This is the tourmaline I told you about on the plane. It's beautiful, isn't it? This kind of thing is very popular in our country now. After introducing the 5 precious gemstones, he began to introduce the colored gemstones next to them. The colorful gems were tourmaline. This kind of thing was not very valuable in the past, but now it was very popular. However, Jiang Hai picked up a few pieces and tried them. He was sure that the spiritual energy did not come from them. Although he also liked sparkling things, this thing was not what he wanted. Seeing that Jiang Hai was not interested in tourmaline, Fatty Wang continued to introduce other stones: spinel, topaz, olivine, garnet, crystal, feldspar, tanzanite, pyroxene, cordierite, zircon. But for these stones, Jiang Hai shook his head. He felt that there was no spiritual energy in these stones. It was understandable. After all, when he went to the shipwreck, the pile of gems was not less than here. At that time, he did not feel the acceleration of the spiritual energy, let alone now. After confirming that the spiritual energy was not found by the gems, Jiang Hai looked to the side. Next, Wang Yang introduced organic gemstones. The so-called organic gemstones referred to things formed by animals or plants. They were not real stones. The most famous type of gemstone was coral. In China, the most expensive type of coral was red coral. The price wasn't cheap, but Jiang Hai also made some small discoveries about these red corals. He found that some of these coral products had some spiritual energy, but some did not. It was obvious that if there was spiritual energy, it was real, and if there was no spiritual energy, it was fake. The most important thing was that the spiritual energy was too little, so it could not be absorbed. This was just like the creatures in Jiang Hai's manner. Jiang Hai could inject spiritual energy into them, but he could not absorb it from them. To absorb spiritual energy, he could only rely on the spiritual energy between heaven and earth. That was all. Other than corals, the other things were not too valuable. For example, amber could be artificially made now. However, the really valuable things were left behind tens of thousands or even hundreds of millions of years ago. Amber was actually tree oil. If there was a bug in the tree oil, it was called amber. If there was nothing, it was called beeswax. This thing was also very popular in recent years. A good piece of beeswax was even worth hundreds of thousands. However, this thing was the same as corals. Some of them had spiritual energy, and some of them did not. However, he still could not absorb the spiritual energy. Jiang Hai was very sure that these things were not what he wanted. In addition to amber and beeswax, Jiang Hai also looked at pearls and shells. Of course, shells did not refer to any shells in the sea. They were specifically referring to the giant clam, one of the 8 treasures of Buddhism. However, these two things were also the same. They did not have any spiritual energy. Seeing Jiang Hai exclude so many things, Wang Yang was also a little speechless. Just now, he looked at Jiang Hai with some curiosity and thought that he was a big customer. Now, it seemed that he was just curious. After looking at so many things, he had no intention of buying. But as the saying goes, the people in the capital were very prideful. Since he said that he was going to introduce, he had to finish what he started. So Fatty Wang still pushed his smiling face and walked to the last area, which was the jade area. At this time, he no longer had any expectations for Jiang Hai to buy things. He just came over purely as a friend. He came over to show off to his friend. Speaking of jade, the most popular thing now was naturally jade. But to be honest, this thing was the same as a gem in Jiang Hai's eyes. It said that it had spiritual energy, but Jiang Hai did not feel any fluctuation of spiritual energy from it. In other words, Jiang Hai did not know whether it was real or fake when he bought it. For example, Jiang Hai knew whether it was real or fake, but he did not know at all. So he had no interest in jade. After leaping over the largest jade area in the jade area, Wang Yang took out a jade pendant from the cabinet and handed it to Jiang Hai to have a look. He introduced it while he was at it. This is a hetian. But I won't lie to you. This is not produced in China. Although the quality in China is the best, I can't buy it. This is from Russia. It's a quality of green and white jade. This should have been heavily hyped in the past few years, but it has fallen recently. My stock here has also been suppressed a lot. But fortunately, recently I heard that the Imperial Court is going to apply for this thing to be our national jade. I think there will be some harvest then. Fatty Wang also said with a smile as he stuffed the jade pendant into Jiang Hai's hand. But when Jiang Hai's hand touched this piece of jade, Jiang Hai's eyes suddenly lit up. Because he instantly felt that this jade pendant contained a lot of spiritual energy, and the most important thing was that these spiritual energy were slowly entering his body through the contact of his skin. There was not much spiritual energy. The amount of spiritual energy in Jiang Hai's piece was comparable to the spiritual energy in 100 pieces of jade of this size. The reason why Jiang Hai was so shocked was that the spiritual energy in it was not simple spiritual energy. After this spiritual energy entered his body, it actually mobilized other spiritual energy, making them actively run in his body, absorbing the spiritual energy from the outside world at a faster speed. Feeling this, Jiang Hai's eyes suddenly turned green. Chapter 444. It has been almost 10 months since Jiang Hai obtained the Dragon Balls. He was very clear that his glory, splendor, wealth, and status in this world depended on it. He could lose everything except for this, because this was his root, his everything. So during this time, he was not so concerned about business, nor was he so concerned about women. The only thing he was most concerned about was his spiritual aura. He had been looking for how to make his spiritual aura absorb faster and become stronger. But after searching for a long time, the only thing he found was tea leaves, but the tea leaves could only help Jiang Hai absorb about 1 or 2% more spiritual aura. Of course, if he waited for Jiang Hai's tea tree to be harvested, then his tea leaves would have a better effect. But now he had to wait. He had just planted it this year. If he wanted to harvest it, he had to wait at least until next year around the Qingming festival. Originally, he thought that his spiritual aura was estimated to be like this, and he was preparing to slowly upgrade. Suddenly he found that there was something that could speed up his spiritual aura absorption. Just such a small piece of Hetian jade could increase his spiritual aura absorption speed by about 10%. What if it was a big piece? What if he used this thing to make a room and a bed? Thinking about it, Jiang Hai's eyes couldn't help but light up. Are there any other Hetian jades? Let me see. Seeing this, Jiang Hai took the initiative to talk to Fatty Wang for the first time. Yes. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fatty Wang, who had no intention of selling things, was stunned for a moment, and then immediately took out the Hetian jades. He knew that Jiang Hai was not a person who was short of money. Jiang Hai also held these Hetian jades and felt them. According to the color, Hetian jades were divided into white jade, cyan jade, green-white jade, black jade, blue and white jade, jasper jade, topaz jade and sugar jade. Among them, white jade was the most important variety of Hetian jade, and the price was also the most expensive. And in Jiang Hai's hands, indeed, it was expensive for a reason. The most expensive white jade and cyan jade had the best absorption effect. A piece of jade that was almost the size of a palm could increase Jiang Hai's absorption speed by about 11% to 15%. The second was the green-white jade, which was the one just now, which increased it by about 8% to 10%. Then there was the black jade at 5%, the blue jade at 3%, the jasper at 2%, and the topaz at 2%. Jiang Hai could only feel the spiritual aura in the jade, but he could not absorb it. This proved that white jade and cyan jade were the best for Jiang Hai. Putting down these Hetian jades, Jiang Hai didn't feel anxious. Instead, he went to look at the other jades. Opal, fine jade, Dushan jade, Charo stone, Narfeldspar jade, emerald stone, lapis lazuli, malachite, grape stone, fluorite, bloodstone, Shoshan stone, Qingtian stone, different pole ore, sea grain stone, Suji stone. Wang Yang's place was indeed specialized in these things. There were many stones that Jiang Hai had never heard of, but he had them all here. After all, Jiang Hai was just a layman. He was far from being as skilled as Wang Yang. Among these stones, Jiang Hai also found some. The bloodstone, Qingtian stone, and sea grain stone in these jades were all beneficial to his spiritual aura collection. But unfortunately, these spiritual auras were very little, far less than the Hetian jade that gave Jiang Hai a strong feeling. I want this kind of Hetian jade, as long as it is green and white. Raw stones are also fine. I don't know if brother can get it. Touching these Hetian jades in front of him, Jiang Hai asked Fatty Wang. He was really tempted this time. Oh. You want raw stones? Forgive me for asking, but what do you want so much Hetian jade for? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Wang Yang froze for a moment. The imagined excitement did not appear on his face. Instead, he looked at Jiang Hai with some worry. Hee, brother, you don't have to worry too much. I don't plan to enter this industry. I just plan to use this thing to decorate my home. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai said with a smile, and then his eyes began to shine. Decorate? Decorate with this thing? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fatty Wang couldn't help but be a little confused. What's going on? Well, with this equipment, I am going to make my room's walls and floor into this kind of jade. My bed will also be made into this kind of jade. I will also make pillows and a few reclining chairs. Since this kind of jade was beneficial to his advancement, Jiang Hai would not let it go. Is he short of money now? He is not short of money, so he wants to make it the best. Oil futures can be temporarily put aside, this thing is the most important. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Wang Yang, Minister Qin, and even Qi Li were stunned. Is Jiang Hai crazy? Why did he make his home like this? Is he going to sleep on the jade? Doesn't he feel nervous? Jiang Hai. Looking at Jiang Hai, who seems to have lost his mind, Qi Li couldn't help but pull his sleeve. I'm fine, this jade is very useful to me. Brother, just tell me if you can get it. Looking at Wang Yang, Jiang Hai said with a smile, Jiang Hai will not let go of anything that can improve his spiritual aura. Is there a requirement for the place of origin? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fatty Wang was sure that Jiang Hai was not joking with him. If it is true, then it will be a big business, but if Jiang Hai only wants domestic jade, then he can't do anything. Basically, more than 70% of the domestic Hetian jade was taken up by other big businesses. He could only get a little. That was why Fatty Wang expanded more of his business overseas, because there were still a lot of empty markets there. No requirements, but I only want this kind of green jade and white jade. Hearing Fatty Wang's words, Jiang Hai also said seriously. Just now, he tried Hetian jade from different places. In fact, for Jiang Hai, the difference is not big. At present, in the world, there are only a few places that produce Hetian jade. In addition to the producing provinces, Huaxia's Qing province, Soviet Russia, Canada, Taiwan province, and nearby Korea and Shu province all produce Hetian jade. However, because of the different places of origin, the price and name are also very different. For example, Soviet Russia is called Russian material, Qing province is called Qing material. The average quality is the best in Xi'an province, but this is just average. After all, there are good and bad everywhere. It is impossible that the worst in this place is better than the best in that place. What's more, what Jiang Hai wants is the best. Like Hetian jade and jade, it is divided into two categories. One is the collection material, which is the jade that has been produced. It can be directly processed or directly collected. This kind of material was naturally very expensive, and the other kind was the processing material. The jadeite was called half-raw stone, which was the stone material that had been picked and confirmed to have the goods inside. The former was naturally the same, and the latter was more or less a gambling element. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fatty Wang has already begun to calculate in his heart. The material that Jiang Hai wants is the best, which is the top-level material. If it is calculated according to Jiang Hai's price, the price is too high. A piece of top-level Hetian jade card is sold here for 65,000 renminbi. The weight is about half a tael, about 25 grams, which is equivalent to 2,600 yuan per gram. This is not carved by a master. Of course, Jiang Hai doesn't want a master to carve it. What he wants is a whole piece of Hetian jade to make a floor, a bed, a pillow, a recliner. There is no need for a master to carve, nor any crafting fee, only the jade money. That kilogram is 2.6 million renminbi. Jiang Hai wants to make a bed. According to the calculation of 2 meters by 2 meters, this bed needs to use at least 50 kilograms of material. Of course, this is counting the price of the legs and the bed board under the bed, which is made of wood. Only the bed surface and the head of the bed are made of jade. Not counting the crafting fee, it is worth 130 million renminbi. Of course, it can't be sold at the retail price. However, even if a gram is 1,600 yuan, minus 1,000 yuan, the material cost of 50 kilograms is 80 million renminbi. This is just a bed. If you include the recliner and the floor, Fatty Wang can't help but take a breath. It seems that he is going to make a fortune. I want a bed, a big bed, 100 kilograms of material. The floor should be spread all over my room. The size is different, but it must be solid. I also want 3 recliners and 4 pillows. No matter how Fatty Wang calculates, Jiang Hai says what he wants. 100 kilograms of material is 160 million renminbi. The floor in the room, of course, does not include the bathroom and the small living room in his room. Only his room is about 30 square meters. According to the thinner jade material, 1 square meter is 3 kilograms. 30 square meters is about 100 kilograms, which is 320 million renminbi. In addition to the 3 reclining chairs, 1 on the balcony, 1 in the front yard, and 1 in the backyard. Each reclining chair weighs at least 20 kilograms, which makes it 60 kilograms, which makes it 96 million yuan. Altogether, it's 416 million yuan. Even if you round it up and give the pillow to Jiang Hai, and you don't need to pay for the labor, it's still 410 million yuan. Thinking of this, Wang Yang can't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva subconsciously. To be honest, he is a little surprised. Jiang Hai, you have to think about it. This is not a small amount of money. This is a deal worth hundreds of millions. At this time, Minister Qin, who has been listening for a long time, hesitated and said to Jiang Hai. To be honest, he is not very interested in these things. To be honest, he feels that it is unnecessary to spend hundreds of millions of RMB to sleep on jade and step on jade. But he really doesn't understand why Jiang Hai does this. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai just smiled and did not explain more. If that's the case, I'll take a step back. I'll make all of them into top-grade processed white jade. They're collectible. I'm sure you know that you can't afford them. 1 gram costs tens of thousands of yuan. But those stones are the same as these stones. It's just that they're naturally formed and are very valuable. I will give you 1,500 renminbi for 1 gram. According to you, you need at least 250 kilograms of material, which is about 375 million renminbi. It can only be higher than this, not lower. Are you really going to buy it? Chapter 445. Of course, let's sign the contract first, and then I'll send you 100 million renminbi. You can send it to me as soon as possible. Jiang Hai looked at Wang Yang in front of him and said very seriously. 375 million renminbi. This much RMB is equivalent to about 57.9 million US dollars. Jiang Hai has this much cash now, not to mention, this is to help him level up faster. Not to mention spending 300 million renminbi, even if it costs 3 billion renminbi, he will spend it. After all, this is the foundation of his life in this world. About a month, I can send it to you in about a month. Wang Yang was about to go crazy when he heard Jiang Hai's words. Just now, he just invited Jiang Hai to come over out of courtesy, but he didn't expect to make a business worth hundreds of millions just like that. Although Fatty Wang's business was not small, his annual turnover as a second-hand dealer was less than 10 million. The shop could earn a few million, but these few million would have to be given away at the end of the year. Although Jiang Hai's business will cost him a lot of money, he will at least earn more than 100 million renminbi. This is equivalent to what he earns in 10 years. The most important thing is that after he gets this money, he can do other things. He is really rich, very rich. Okay, 1 month it is. Send these things to the address I've given you. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai immediately said with a smile, and immediately asked Penelope to go to the shop next door to print the contract. Wang Yang immediately went to look for his lawyer. Initially, his lawyer was quite arrogant when he came. After confirming that there are no problems with the contract, Jiang Hai and Wang Yang also signed it. Then Jiang Hai first transferred 100 million renminbi to Wang Yang's account. Of course, Wang Yang can also run away with this money, but in this case, the goods, houses, shops, etc. in China will all belong to Jiang Hai. These things are worth almost 100 million renminbi. After everything is done, Wang Yang said that he would treat Jiang Hai to a meal, but Jiang Hai has something to do today, so he can only make an appointment tomorrow. After everything is confirmed, Jiang Hai and others left Wang Yang's shop. Of course, before leaving, Wang Yang gave each of them a small thing. The so-called small things were all worth tens of thousands of yuan. Chili got a pair of diamond earrings, Penelope got a ruby necklace, Delina and Marion got a Hetian jade talisman, Azalina got a jade bracelet, Feng Yunshin and Ai Xiaoxi originally wanted to choose a ring, but Wang Yang didn't want to waste any more time. Instead, he gave Wang Yang a pair of diamond earrings, Penelope got a ruby necklace, Delina and Marion got a jade talisman, Azalina got a jade bracelet, and Feng Yunshin and Ai Xiaoxi originally wanted to choose a ring. But after all, this was a gift from someone else, not bought by Jiang Hai. They can't wear a ring given by another man. So in the end, they each asked for a bracelet and Jiang Hai casually took a jade token. As for Minister Qin, he is a construction worker. He won't take these things, and he doesn't care about these things. But all in all, everyone is still very happy. Wang Yang sent Jiang Hai and others for a long time before he rushed back to the shop, ready to start working. He will definitely not let go of this business, and who knows if Jiang Hai, this rich man, will still want these things in the future. What if he went crazy one day and decided to turn his own villa into Hetian Yu's? Wouldn't he be in trouble then? After coming out of Wang Yang's shop, Jiang Hai and others are obviously in a good mood. At first, the only one who is a little unhappy is Chili, because Jiang Hai spent hundreds of millions to buy a bunch of useless things. But seeing that Jiang Hai is happy, she didn't say anything. As the saying goes, money can't buy Jiang Hai's happiness. Then, they walked around Panjiayuan and went to look at the street stalls there. Although they didn't get anything useful, Jiang Hai and others unknowingly spent more than 2,000 yuan to buy a bunch of small things. Since they are happy, they don't need to think too much. Seeing that Jiang Hai and others are happy, Minister Qin started to plan in his heart. Just as Jiang Hai thought, this guy indeed has something to do with Jiang Hai. Otherwise, as a dignified deputy minister, he would be crazy to accompany Jiang Hai to have fun. If he wants to show that he cares, he can just send a section chief or a director over. After all, Jiang Hai doesn't have any political status. But now, it seems that he might have to change his purpose. After walking around Panjiayuan, it was already noon. After everyone got back in the car, Minister Qin ordered everyone to go to the Daidu restaurant. This is because they said that they want to eat Tan family's dishes today, and Tan family's dishes are only available in the Daidu restaurant. Tan family's dishes are one of the famous official dishes in Huaxia. It was founded by the family of Tan Zongjuan, a bureaucrat at the end of the Qing dynasty. In 1874, Tan Zongjuan once took the imperial examination and entered the Hanlin Academy as an official, so this dish is also called the imperial examination. There is no branch in the country, only the Daidu restaurant has such a restaurant. Just like Li family's dishes, it is not something you can eat whenever you want to. Normally, if Jiang Hai and others want to eat, it is impossible to eat without making a reservation in advance. But Minister Qin is not an ordinary person. He was also ordered to come here by the higher-ups, so it is naturally impossible to make a reservation. When Jiang Hai and others arrived, they were already able to eat directly. However, when he opened the menu, Jiang Hai found that he was a little confused, because the dishes here are indeed a little. A little, Winner's Braised Wing 1688, Throne Seeker 1688, Oolong Stepping in Green 1688, Royal Red Crown Swallow 1688, Garlic Skirt 1688, Three Stewed Blood Swallow 1688, Dragon Armor Removal, Sea Cucumber, 1688, Premium Dry Leaning Shrimp 1688, First Grade Steamed Tofu 1688, Yam Vegetable Pancake 1688. Looking at this list of dishes, Jiang Hai felt that he was really too naive. These ingredients are not very bad, but they are not particularly good either. There is no top-notch Asiatic wing or top-notch two-headed abalone, but they are sold for 1688. It is up to you to eat it or not. This is no longer a problem of cheating foreigners, this is a problem of cheating foreigners to death. Jiang Hai did some calculations in his heart. For people like them, if they ate until they were full, it would be difficult for them to leave this restaurant without 30,000 or 50,000 yuan. Fortunately, Minister Qin was paying the bill today, so Jiang Hai wouldn't be polite. Minister Qin was also very calm. Although the imperial court did not allow public funds to be used to eat and drink, this was still money that needed to be spent. After all, Jiang Hai had helped the imperial court solve a big problem. Minister Qin was also very calm. After all, Jiang Hai helped the imperial court solve a big problem. Therefore, he does not need to spend this money. Soon, the dishes that Jiang Hai ordered were all served. In fact, it is not only Jiang Hai's first time here, but also Qi Li and others' first time here. After all, very few people would treat people here. If you go to an ordinary seafood restaurant, what can you eat for tens of thousands of yuan? The lobsters are as big as you want, the abalones are as many as you want, and the sea cucumbers are as long as you want. It is not like here, where the stingy dishes are so expensive. Therefore, after seeing the price of these dishes, they are secretly speechless. Even if the price is changed to dollars, these things are too expensive. How can a dish cost nearly $300? This is like eating gold bars. However, when the dishes were served, Jiang Hai was quite satisfied. At least it didn't look bad, and it smelled very good. Out of curiosity, he also took a bite with his chopsticks, but this bite made Jiang Hai immediately narrow his eyes. Delicious. There was really nothing much to say. It was indeed delicious, truly delicious. Every dish had its own unique taste, which was very much in line with Jiang Hai's taste buds. Not only could the original taste of the ingredients be magnified infinitely in his mouth, but the juice that was concocted was also indescribably fresh. This might be the secret of the school's dishes that were not passed on. That is why it is so valuable. This kind of taste was purely due to the chef's craftsmanship. It couldn't be stimulated by the original taste of the ingredients. Even if the ingredients had brought out 120% of the taste, it still wouldn't work. This dish was purely made with the chef's craftsmanship. If the raw materials of these dishes are not even a fraction of 688 yuan, then the chef's craftsmanship is worth 1,000 yuan. Of course, with Jiang Hai's personality, although he likes to eat this kind of food, it is destined that he will never come here without an invitation in the future. The meal is quite enjoyable. Anyway, Minister Qin does not need to spend money, so he is very happy to eat. After lunch, they stepped into the car again, but this time, they are going to the suburbs. Where are we going? The Great Wall? We have already been there. Looking at the road ahead, Jiang Hai hesitated for a moment and said to Minister Qin. To be honest, he already feels very good today. Not only did he buy Hetian jade, but he also had such a meal at noon. The taste of the school's cooking is very good, so he is looking forward to the taste of the Li family's cooking in the evening. Now, seeing the car driving further and further away, although he is not afraid, he is still thinking about the Li family's cooking. He does not want to be unable to eat it when the time comes. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Minister Qin also said with a smile, "Don't worry, you will definitely like it there. Didn't you say that you want to bring some excellent ingredients from our country to the United States? This time, you can choose whatever you want." Hearing that, Jiang Hai's eyes suddenly lit up. He is indeed very interested in these things. What is the most troublesome thing in the United States? That is, he can't eat the taste of his hometown, although this time, Xiaoya came to his hometown. However, even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Some things can't be made just because you know how to cook. Some ingredients can be replaced, but some can't. This is a very simple problem, so Jiang Hai is going back this time. Since it is convenient, he is going to bring more things back. In addition to the 3 kinds of fish, other things are indispensable. Chapter 446. The car quickly drove out of the capital. Of course, the capital's urban area was very large, unlike Ice City. Although it was the largest city in the inland, only smaller than Fog City, but Fog City was next to the Yangtze River, the urban area was particularly small. Out of the city center, it was basically the urban-rural fringe. Further north, even some villages could be considered as part of Ice City. Although the capital's area was not as large as Ice City, the urban area was much larger. After all, Ice City had not even filled up the area between the 2nd and 3rd Ring Road, but the capital had already filled up the 5th Ring Road. However, this time, Jiang Hai and the others did not go to the 5th Ring Road, but out of the 5th Ring Road. According to Jiang Hai's estimation, it was better to say that this was Ji province than the capital. However, the people here were still using the capital's ID cards. Fortunately, they did not drive to Ji province. In front of Jiang Hai and the others, a huge building complex appeared. As the car drove over, Jiang Hai saw a banner hanging at the main entrance. It was a warm celebration of the victory of the 17th National Agricultural Products Sales Conference. Seeing this, Jiang Hai's eyes could not help but light up. Agricultural Products Sales Conference. What Jiang Hai wanted to buy, in addition to those expensive things, were the local specialties of Hedi. Originally, he thought that he would have to go to these places one by one, but he did not expect that he would be able to do this in the capital. I don't know much about the things inside. I've already arranged for someone to accompany you. When you see anything you like, just tell me. How much do you want? I'll give you the price according to the purchase price. Seeing that Jiang Hai was really interested, Minister Qin also said this with a smile. It seemed that he was not going to accompany Jiang Hai in. Then I'll have to trouble you, Minister Qin. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai did not insist on his company. He smiled and led everyone out of the car. Sure enough, as soon as they got out of the car, there was already a middle-aged man waiting for Jiang Hai. Hello. Are you Mr. Jiang? My name is Sun Yuan. You can call me Old Sunday. Let me introduce you to the things inside. As soon as he saw Jiang Hai get out of the car, the middle-aged man walked over enthusiastically and said with a friendly face. Then, Old Sun, let's go in. Jiang Hai glanced at the car behind him and said with a smile. He then followed Sun Yuan into the hall in front of him. Minister Qin, who was in the car, took out his phone and made a call. Yes, just as Jiang Hai thought, Minister Qin was indeed looking for Jiang Hai because he had something to discuss with Jiang Hai. Although Hua Xia and the United States were not complete enemies, they still saw each other as their biggest threat. Now that Jiang Hai helped the imperial court solve the oil problem, the imperial court was thinking that it seemed that Jiang Hai's influence in the United States was not small. He even knew Du Feimin. Could they develop Jiang Hai and make him a spy for the imperial court? At the very least, his manor could become a hiding place for their other spies and agents. Of course, the imperial court also knew that if you talked to Jiang Hai about patriotism, politics, and self-sacrifice, Jiang Hai would not even listen. Why would he risk his family's destruction to help the imperial court offend the American government in the United States? If this was discovered, his manor would be destroyed in an instant. Therefore, it was precisely because of this that Minister Qin came to accompany Jiang Hai. In fact, he was also testing Jiang Hai. In this world, the imperial court believed that no one was airtight. Jiang Hai must have a weakness, and the first thing that came to their mind was money. They had also done a simple investigation on Jiang Hai. They thought that Jiang Hai could not make much money. After all, Jiang Hai raised cows. If it were not for the fact that the cows he raised were too good, the price would not have been very high. They really couldn't be sold at a high price. An adult cow in the United States was only around $10,000 on average. 20,000 cows were indeed worth $200 million, but there were taxes, labor, drinks, and so on. One cow was only around $6,000 on average. After deducting the $5,000 needed to buy the cow, one could only make around $1,000 per cow. 20,000 cows were worth $20 million. Converted into RMB, it was more than $120 million. The imperial court thought that if they directly gave Jiang Hai $1 billion or $800 million, would Jiang Hai agree? Of course, the imperial court would not spend more than that. After all, it was just a location. There was no need to spend more than $10 billion. However, after seeing Jianghai by the Hetianjie today, Minister Qin knew that this idea might not work. Jianghai spent $400 million just to renovate his own room. That meant that Jianghai's net worth was at least $400 million. $1 billion or $800 million would not be enough to satisfy Jianghai. Money was not enough, and Jianghai did not need the privileges in the country. He was not interested in entering the bureaucracy. He had many beautiful women around him. He did not lack women. Money, power, and women. Jianghai did not lack these three things. In that case, the imperial court really did not have anything to offer. As he thought of this, Minister Qin's attitude gradually changed. Otherwise, he would have followed them in. But now, Jianghai did not care. If he did not say anything, Jianghai did not need to refuse. It was simple. Regardless of what Minister Qin and the higher-ups said, Jianghai had already walked into the hall. However, as soon as he walked in, he could not help but exclaim. This hall was really big. It was about 20,000 square meters. It could be even bigger. Huaxia had a total of 34 provincial administrative regions. This place was also divided into 34 parts. At this time, many businessmen were wandering around the major regions, looking for opportunities to cooperate. This place was not open to the public. In other words, ordinary tourists could not enter. This place was specially prepared for the businessmen in the land. Of course, there were not only plant specialties, but also animal specialties. Sun Yuan came in with Jianghai. As soon as he walked in, many people took the initiative to greet him. It seemed that Sun Yuan's status here was not low. It was understandable. Although Minister Qin did not accompany Jianghai, Jianghai still enjoyed Sun Yuan's status. Our agricultural products fair was specially approved by the higher-ups in 1997. It was suspended in 2008 for the purpose of sharing local specialties and resources. Therefore, you can find almost all the products in the country here. Everything that can be found in the local market can be found here. Let's look around as we walk. Looking at Jianghai, Sun Yuan greeted the others and smiled. While leading Jianghai and the others inside, he introduced them. The first thing that entered Jianghai's eyes were the specialties of several major municipalities. Although municipalities were provincial in name, to be honest, after all, no matter how big a city was, it was just a city. It could not be compared with a province, even if it had an advantage in administrative level. The first thing that Jianghai saw were the several booths in the capital. The booths in the capital did not have many things. Roast duck, various pastries, pickles from liubiju, bamboo shoots, dates, and so on. But to be honest, there was nothing that attracted Jianghai. The only thing that attracted Jianghai was the instant boiled mutton, but unfortunately, this mutton was not a specialty of the capital. It was from Mongolia. The booths in Shanghai did not have much. Most of them were pastries, but there were two things that interested Jianghai. Saffron and 9 caddies of yellow. Yes, saffron was not a specialty of Tibet. It was from Shanghai. It was just that this thing was called saffron. More than 90% of the saffron in the country was produced in Shanghai. Therefore, this was the main production area. 9 caddies of yellow was also called pudong chicken. Because an adult rooster could grow more than 9 hands, it was also called 9 caddies of yellow. As one of the 3 largest chickens in the country, only the Langshan chicken could be compared with it. Jianghai was very interested in these two things. After remembering it in his heart, Jianghai continued to walk inside. The exhibition hall behind Shanghai was in Tianjin City. Tianjin City was also one of the municipalities. There were a lot of specialties. The most famous steamed buns, pear, fried dough twists, and radishes, also known as sand nest radishes, are known throughout the country for their crispness and sweetness. This time, Jiang Hai wanted to get some of these things back to grow. After all, there were too few vegetables in the United States. Next was Fog City. But to be honest, the things in Fog City overlapped with those in Sichuan. For example, some tea, hot pot, etc. They were basically the same, so Jiang Hai did not look at them carefully. After the 4 municipalities, it was time for the other provinces. Yes, Huaxia had a total of 4 municipalities. The famous Shenzhen city was a special economic zone, but it was not a municipality. If Jiang Hai did not come here, he would not understand. After the 4 municipalities, it was time for the 3 eastern provinces. The specialties of the 3 eastern provinces were also quite overlapping. Jiang Hai was from Bing City, so he naturally knew that the specialties of Liao province were also found in Ji province and Heilong province. The only thing that they did not have was seafood. However, Jiang Hai did not lack seafood. What Ji province had, Heilong province and Liao province also had. What Heilong province had, the other 2 provinces also had. The only special thing was the specialties of Xing and territory. For example, the locust fish and flying dragon mentioned before. But Jiang Hai did not lack these things. He walked around the exhibition hall and was interested in a lot of things. But he could not raise most of them. The fungus in the northeast was the best in the world. But the problem was that he did not know how to raise them. The mushrooms here were also the best in the world. But it was still the same problem. He did not know how to raise them. Ginseng was also the best in the world. How can Changbai ginseng and other ginseng be compared? But it was still the same problem. He did not know how to raise them. So, after looking around, he wanted a lot of things, but there were not many things that he could buy. But when he was about to walk through the exhibition hall of the 3 provinces, he suddenly saw something. Rice. Seeing the rice, Jiang Hai did not know why, but he swallowed his saliva subconsciously. Then, his eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, rice. He said that after going to the US, something was missing. Growing rice seemed to be a good idea. Chapter 447. Those who had lived overseas would know that rice can be found in supermarkets in Europe and the US. But Europeans and Americans do not buy much rice. They were more used to eating pasta, which was bread and the like, but Asians preferred to eat rice. When it comes to rice, there are 3 major rice-producing areas in the world. The rice produced in these 3 areas is the best. Of course, rice is also divided into different grades and types. Ordinary hybrid rice can only fill one's stomach. The worst rice produced in these 3 areas is Korean rice. Huaxia's rice is in the middle and Japan's rice is the best. But Japan is only a small place. That's why the amount of rice produced there is limited, and it is very expensive. It's hard to imagine that a bowl of rice with a Japanese electric cooker can be sold for dozens of RMB. It's hard to understand. As for the rice in China, there were 2 places that were recommended. One was Heilongjiang City, and the other was Liao Province's Jinpan. In the beginning, the rice in Jinpan was specially provided. But later, because Liao Province was an industrial province, the land was heavily polluted. As a result, Liao Province's rice gradually lost its original glory, while Heilong Province, which had always been China's granary, suddenly emerged as a new force to be reckoned with. For many years, it had been the country's #1 grain producer. Just the grain produced in one season was enough to feed the entire country for 3 months. The quality of the rice produced is also second to none. Of course, this also depends on the original rice. Pearl rice is sold in supermarkets all over the country. This type of rice is also the most produced in the Northeast. But to be honest, this type of rice is sold in the villages. If it is not sold, it will be used to feed the chickens. People rarely eat this type of rice. Of course, when the new rice is harvested, they will eat some of it. But it is not the main food. People like Jiang Hai and the rest of the people in Bing City eat Dao Waxiang rice. This type of rice is very expensive in the south. Kofko's Dao Waxiang rice is sold for more than 80 renminbi per 10 kilograms bag. This is only the worst variety of Dao Waxiang rice. If it is a good variety, it will be sold for more than 10 renminbi per 500 kilograms. In the local area, this rice was only sold for about 3 to 4 renminbi. The better ones were sold for about 6 renminbi. In the south, the price would be doubled. But after going abroad, the price was not only doubled, it was 6 times. Jiang Hai bought rice in Winthrop. Korean rice cost $21 per kilogram, northeastern rice cost $18 per kilogram, and Japanese rice cost $32 per kilogram. Although the taste of Korean rice was not as good as Northeast rice, it was more expensive than Northeast rice. However, looking at the price, it was really a little painful. It was $18 a kilogram, which was $9 a caddy. It was more than $50 a caddy. Fortunately, Jiang Hai didn't lack money. But before he saw it, he didn't care. Now that he suddenly saw this type of rice, Jiang Hai's brain became active. He specially called Robbins to ask if anyone in his family knows how to grow rice. The result was that no one knows how to grow rice. But it wasn't difficult to grow. After all, America was all about machines, so it wasn't difficult to grow them. Moreover, Winthrop had abundant water resources, so it wasn't difficult to grow rice and other things. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also made a purchase list of rice in his heart. But it is destined not to be planted this year. It is already June. He missed the planting time. Winthrop and Huaxia's northeast temperature are about the same. So he has to wait until next year to plant. But this year, Jiang Hai can buy a batch to eat. This is the most important thing. In Mongolia, there are a lot of things. Jiang Hai has been coveting Ujimkin sheep for a long time. This kind of sheep is best for mutton soup. It is much better than boar goat. Jiang Hai naturally wants to buy this. There was also the German donkey from Lu province. Dragon meat in the sky, donkey meat on the ground. Jiang Hai also wanted to see if the donkey he raised was as delicious as the flying dragon. In addition to donkey meat, there is also pork. There is also pork in the United States, but it is too little, and the taste is also ordinary. After all, pork is not an indispensable dish on the American table, so there are not many people who buy it. Naturally, there are not many people who raise it. Since Jiang Hai wants to buy this time, he also wants to bring some pigs back. The pig he chose is the Jiangxiang pig. This is a national second-class protected breed. It is the best pig in the country. It is only produced in the Jiangxiang Yueyang district of your province. This kind of pig is a kind of miniature pig. Its weight rarely exceeds 30 kilograms. It can be raised as a pet pig. Of course, the best way is to eat meat, especially roasted meat. The taste is really good. Other than these food, Jiang Hai also wants to buy a lot of tea trees. These tea trees are good for his absorption of spiritual qi. It is not like the time when he asked Elder Zhang for tea trees. Now, Jiang Hai can get as many tea trees as he wants. There are only a few tea trees in his house. Although they are all alive and growing well, it is not easy to get them. But to be honest, it is not easy to get tea leaves. The amount of tea leaves that can be picked from each tea tree is very small. When the tea trees are gathered together, Feng Yu has to drink them carefully. He does not dare to brew too much tea. But it does not matter now. He can bring back 100 to 80 tea trees. If he wants to drink Longjing tea, he can drink Shuya tea. If he wants to drink Taiping tea, he can drink Taiping tea. After walking around here for more than 3 hours, Jiang Hai also listed the things he wants to buy. Of course, this is only what he wants to buy now. If he thinks of something in the future, he will buy again. Anyway, the imperial court allowed him to take these things away. In addition to the 3 kinds of fish he wants at the beginning, he wants 209 kilogram yellow chickens, 200 Wolf Mountain chickens, and 100 kilograms of saffron bulbs, which is the plant of this thing, which is 50 kilograms. He is going to plant these flower stalks behind his villa. Of course, this thing is very popular recently. It is said that animals are not allowed to eat it. But in fact, it is all nonsense. Nothing will happen to animals if they eat it. In addition to the flower stalks, there are also the seeds of sand nest radish. This kind of thing is originally a protected species, but Sun Yuan agreed with Jiang Hai with a smile. There are 1,000 Ujimkin sheep. Jiang Hai has eaten this kind of sheep before. It is really delicious. So now he can't wait to see what these sheep will become in his pasture. There are 20 German donkeys. This kind of meat donkey has no market in the United States, unlike the Ujimkin sheep. Even if he does not eat it, Robbins and the others will still eat it. But donkeys and horses are not eaten in the United States. So, he basically raises them for his family to eat, so he does not need too many. There are 100 Jiangxiang pigs. Jiang Hai is still very interested in this kind of small pig. Most importantly, Americans also eat pork. The most important thing is the rice with the fragrance of the rice flour. However, the current rice can only be planted for 1 season. Jiang Hai is not too concerned about this. He will come back to buy next year. The Americans are still quite open. After roughly ordering these things here, Jiang Hai also paid the deposit. Although Jiang Hai bought a lot of things, in fact, the things themselves are not worth much. The most valuable thing is actually the transportation. If he wants to transport these live animals to the United States, it is definitely impossible to take a plane. By the time he takes a plane, more than half of these animals will die first. Then, he can only take a boat. It is close to a month, plus the transportation of the boat and the consumption of their feed. These are all money. However, Jiang Hai is not too concerned about this. It is not like he has no money. So, Jiang Hai first transferred 1 million yuan to this person called Sun Yuan. Everything will be left to him. If there is more money, it will all be his. If there is not enough money, Jiang Hai will compensate him. It is that simple. As for the 3 types of fish that Jiang Hai wanted at the beginning, Sun Yuan also told him about it. The current situation is not too ideal. Looking at Jiang Hai, Sun Yuan said to Jiang Hai, Mr. Jiang, the 3 types of fish you want, Minister Qin has already instructed. I have also coordinated. The large yellow croakers are not difficult to get. We can send them to you directly. Together with these animals, we will charge you $8 for each fry. This is also the intention of the higher-ups. $8? Then let's start with 3 million. Listening to this price, it is really cheap. In fact, what Jiang Hai does not know is that the reason why the large yellow croakers he ate that day are so expensive is that they are wild. The yellow croakers raised by this family are only about $40 or $50. There is a huge difference in price. However, Jiang Hai does not care, because the fish he raises are wild, even wilder than the wild ones. This is also his secret. Upon hearing Jiang Hai's words, Sun Yuan's heart skipped a beat. Originally, he thought that this time's business was just a small one, $1 million or so deal. He didn't think that Jiang Hai would directly ask for 3 million fish. Sun Yuan's heart skipped a beat. $8 for 1 tail, 3 million for 1 tail, that is 24 million yuan. He can also make a lot of money from this. This is not a problem. After all, Minister Qin has spoken, so we can give you some. At most, we can get you 100,000 fish, the price of each fish is $70. Looking at Jiang Hai, Sun Yuan carefully said. When Jiang Hai opened his mouth and said 3 million taels, Sun Yuan was scared silly. This time, he didn't even say, you, but you. 70? I will pay 80 for one tail. Let's see if we can get more. Jiang Hai calculated in his heart. In fact, Jiang Hai's main goal is the Yangtze River swordfish. 100,000 fish is really not enough. Moreover, he is confident that he can make these fish grow fast and wild, and adapt to his manner. This is where his confidence lies. This, I have to ask, but we can't bring these fish to you. You have to see and talk to them in person. Finally, there is the Chinese bahaba fish. We have already sent people to catch it at the estuary, but now there is only one fish. It may take some time to get 8 fish. Looking at Jiang Hai, Sun Yuan whispered. Chapter 448. Ah. In the hotel room, Feng Yunshan's voice came intermittently. On the big bed, the battle between Jiang Hai, Feng Yunshan, and Ai Xiaoxi continued. In the afternoon, when everyone left the agricultural trade center, it was already past 5:00 in the afternoon. Then, everyone took a car and went to the legendary Li family's restaurant. However, the Li family's restaurant was basically not much different from the Tan family's restaurant. The taste was really good, but the ingredients could only be considered okay. It was good to scare foreigners, but people in the country did not like it. Unlike the Tan family's restaurant, the Li family's restaurant did not allow people to order. Here, it was a set of dishes, and they could eat whatever was served. Even with Minister Qin following them, Jiang Hai and the others came according to the restaurant's requirements. After eating a delicious dinner, everyone returned to the hotel. After Minister Qin sent Jiang Hai and the others here, he took the initiative to leave. He did not look for Jiang Hai to tell him his purpose. Jiang Hai was also happy to be free. After Minister Qin left, Qi Li took the initiative to leave with Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi. For her, although she knew the relationship between Jiang Hai and them, she could not stay here. But he couldn't just watch them live here, and It seemed that Jiang Hai didn't have any intention of letting him stay. Since she couldn't get what she couldn't get, she didn't want others to get it easily. That was why Qi Li left with them. After sending them home, she didn't expect the two of them to take a taxi back. When the three of them met, it was naturally like lightning striking fire. Jiang Hai had not done this for a long time. Last time, he vaguely remembered that something bad happened with Selena Gomez. Since then, he had been relying on his left and right hand to live. So much so that he felt that his hand had a tendency to decline a little. As for Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi, since they came back, they naturally kept their chastity for Jiang Hai. In certain aspects, women would also think about things. Because of this, after the three of them met, there was no need to say much. The clothes disappeared in less than a minute, and then the battle began. After a full 3 hours, it was already midnight, and the battle came to an end. With Jiang Hai's physique that was twice as strong as a human's, he was able to fight 1 against 2 and win in the end. However, he was also very tired. With his physical fitness, it was not a very common thing to be covered in sweat. As for Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi, they were already like 2 piles of mud, unable to exert any strength. Looking at the sweat stains on their bodies, Jiang Hai carried them up and went to the hotel's jacuzzi. After filling the tub with water and changing the bed sheets, Jiang Hai carried them to lie in the jacuzzi. Feeling the impact of the water in the bathtub, Jiang Hai couldn't help but let out a long breath. This feeling was really great. How long are you going to stay this time? Leaning on Jiang Hai's chest, Feng Yunshan asked slowly. The day has passed, and they haven't found a chance to talk to Jiang Hai. I don't know, now that everything is almost done, maybe I will leave soon. What about you? Have you thought about it? Do you want to go with me? Tightening his arms, Jiang Hai asked them. We haven't thought about it yet, because we don't know what identity we will be going to you with. Burying her head on Jiang Hai's shoulder, Feng Yunshan laughed at herself, and then said slowly. Hearing her words, AI Xiaoxi on the other side also tightened her arms. As for Jiang Hai, his body trembled slightly, because he didn't know what to say now. As the mistress? That's obviously impossible. It's not that Jiang Hai is ruthless, but now that he is married to Qi Li, it's impossible for him to welcome the new mistress so blatantly. But if it's not as the mistress, what identity will it be? With other identities, Jiang Hai wouldn't be embarrassed, but what about them? Now, for the first time, Jiang Hai felt that all those harem novels and stallion novels that he had read before were all lies. Why would a woman be so loyal to a man after doing that with him? How much hatred can be wiped away with a smile? People are selfish. Jiang Hai wants to possess them, and they also want to possess Jiang Hai, but they know that they can't. It's precisely because of this that they have some entanglements, and this book has never had a mistress. I just hope that you can stay by my side, so that I can take care of you, and you don't have so much pressure, but, identity, not now, in the future. Shaking his head, Jiang Hai said hesitantly. In the future, we'll talk about it in the future. If you have the heart, stay with us for a while. By the way, didn't you say you were going to Su Province in the afternoon? Just in time, we're going to Shanghai in a few days, let's go together. Patting Jiang Hai's chest, Feng Yunshan said with a smile. In fact, she was just a little emotional just now. The moment she decided to be with Jiang Hai, she knew that in this life, she might not be able to wear a wedding dress and receive blessings from her family. Jiang Hai is a wild horse. If you fall in love with this guy, then you have to be mentally prepared. She's not young anymore. She and Jiang Hai are the same age. If she can stay by Jiang Hai's side, it should be, not bad. As for AI Xiaoxi, whether she still has a trace of longing or not, it has nothing to do with her. Because she knows that AI Xiaoxi has the qualifications, but she doesn't. Feng Yunshan glanced at the girl who was also lying on Jiang Hai's body and glanced at her. What are you going to Shanghai for? Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment. He didn't hear that they were going to Shanghai. Besides, what are they going to Shanghai for? He really didn't understand. We're going to Shanghai to participate in CJ. We're models, we have to rely on this to make a living. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, AI Xiaoxi also smiled and said with a smile. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. That thing, didn't it start at the end of June? It should be the end of July, the plot requires the end of June, parallel space. It's only the beginning of June now, what are you going to do? Looking at AI Xiaoxi, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts. He used to be a shut-in, kind of a shut-in. After all, he didn't have much to do, so naturally, he also has a soft spot for the exhibition. CJ, also known as China Joy, its full name is Huaxia International Digital Interactive Entertainment Exhibition. At the beginning, the purpose of the exhibition was to give those game developers a stage to show themselves, but later, it slowly changed a little. It was now a competition of who could find the prettier TV girls, who wore less, and who was more ruthless, rather than a competition of the quality of the game. It was precisely because of this that some small game developers who made a lot of money here won a lot of attention and made a lot of money. Every year at this time, Jiang Hai will also refresh the pictures on the internet to see the benefits and so on. But later, those big game developers couldn't sit still, for example, Penguin. Although Penguin games can't be played without money. But after all, Penguin is still the #1 game developer in Huaxia. If they continue to play like this, their advantage will disappear. So in the past 2 years, they have also introduced a new policy that no longer allows the 3 vulgarities. Last year, it was really good, and it was quite tight. But there is no topic, even Jiang Hai, a fan of universal love, doesn't watch it, which means that there is really no one watching it. So this year, there is news that it should be appropriately relaxed, and it can't be as vulgar as before, but it can't be without a topic. However, Jiang Hai is already in the United States at this time, and he doesn't feel anything about this news. We don't need to sign a contract, we don't need to try on clothes, we don't need to walk on the stage. It is indeed opening on the 30th, but we need to prepare in advance. It will take about half a month to prepare in advance. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan rolled her eyes at him. Is money so easy to earn? Even if it is a car exhibition, you have to prepare in advance. How to take photos with these cars, make expressions, and pose, these all need to be carefully planned. For example, most of the showgirls in CJ don't just go up and show off and pose for a while. They still need to perform some things, such as singing, dancing, and so on. They also need to know how to play the products they endorse. They can't be ignorant. It is precisely because of this that they need to go in advance and learn some things first. Especially when it came to learning how to dance, they had to practice for a period of time. Although they didn't practice dancing for the sake of debuting, it was like a group of girls who practiced hundreds or even thousands of times. However, they couldn't be too bad. After all, the manufacturers spend money not to let them make a fool of themselves. It is precisely because of this that they need to go in advance. Hearing Feng Yunshan's explanation, Jiang Hai also nodded, and at the same time, he calculated in his heart. Then let's go together when the time comes. After thinking for a moment, Jiang Hai smiled and said to Feng Yunshan. In any case, he was going to the Su province. The Su province was near Shanghai. Shanghai, Zhejiang province, and the Su province, these three places were close to each other. Usually, when they go there to play, they would go there together. Since they were going to Shanghai, then Jiang Hai might as well take Delina and the others to the Zhejiang province. The Su province was also a good place to play. Most importantly, he would be able to meet them more. Jiang Hai was a bit surprised. Really? That's great. Hearing that Jiang Hai is going with them, Ai Xiaoxi also shouted excitedly. In fact, to be honest, in the beginning, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi didn't really want to go to CJ. Not to mention that it is tiring, the money is not much. They don't lack this money now, and the most important thing is that it is easy to be targeted by some rich people, which is very disgusting. The only advantage is that there is exposure. This is also something that they can't ignore, so they can only be careful. But now, Jiang Hai said that he wants to go with them, so they are relieved. Even if they don't go to work, it is good to go to play. Chapter 449. Shanghai, also known as Shanghai or Shen, was once the most popular city in Huaxia during the previous dynasty. Of course, it was so powerful at that time, not because of the imperial court of the previous dynasty, but because of the concessions here. Speaking of which, these concessions, in the eyes of Jiang Hai's generation, may be the shame of Huaxia at that time. The national strength was weak, so there were things like concessions. However, it was also because of these concessions that Shanghai laid the foundation of an international metropolis at that time. After the current imperial court was in power, Shanghai's development was still very fast. Now, Shanghai had faintly become the second largest city in Huaxia, second only to the existence of the imperial capital. Many international brands set their headquarters in Shanghai, which was also a symbol of national strength. This was the first time Jiang Hai came to Shanghai. Although he had been to the United States many times, Shanghai was the first time he came. After solving the matter in the imperial capital, Jiang Hai stayed in the imperial capital for a few more days. During these days, Qi Li would come over every day to be with Jiang Hai and the others. Gradually, Jiang Hai and the others also got used to the existence of this woman. Although in Jiang Hai's heart, he was still narrow-minded, he still couldn't let go of how Qi Li treated him in the past. Although he wasn't a resentful woman in the boudoir, he was still narrow-minded. He didn't have such a broad heart to forgive Qi Li for what she did in the past. However, now that Jiang Hai was rushing to get close to her, he was really not used to it. His attitude towards her was also slightly eased. In the next few days in the imperial capital, every day during the day, they either stayed in the hotel or went out for a walk. Although there were no scenic spots to go to, they still lived quite happily. In the evening, Feng Yunxian and Ai Xiaoxi also came over to be with Jiang Hai. The life of the three people was still very happy. After a few happy days in the imperial capital, it was also the day for Feng Yunxian and Ai Xiaoxi to go to Shanghai. After Jiang Hai also told Qi Li, everyone left the imperial capital. Although Qi Li also wanted to go, unfortunately, she still needed to keep an eye on the Qi group here. Therefore, only Jiang Hai, Feng Yunxian, Ai Xiaoxi, Penelope, Azalina, Daliana, and Marian sat in the first-class cabin on the flight from the imperial capital to Shanghai, because the two places were not too far away. The flight was still very fast, a little over 2 hours. The plane had already landed in Shanghai and Dongpu Airport. As soon as they got off the plane, the Four Seasons hotel that Jiang Hai had already booked had sent 2 commercial cars to pick up Jiang Hai and the others. Originally, Jiang Hai and the others did not have much luggage. Even if they bought some in the imperial capital, it was not a lot. However, Feng Yunxian and Ai Xiaoxi's luggage was quite a lot. Just the underwear and makeup products had already occupied half of the suitcase. In this regard, Jiang Hai could only laugh. Of course, these so-called makeup products were more for maintenance. They were not contestants with heavy makeup, nor were they existences that would die in the light. Jiang Hai had seen them without makeup before. After getting off the plane, they sat in 2 cars. Jiang Hai, Feng Yunxian, and Ai Xiaoxi were in 1 car. Azalina, Penelope, Daliana, and Marian were in the other car. Jiang Hai booked a total of 4 suites in the hotel, and they stayed as they were originally. As for Feng Yunxian and Ai Xiaoxi, they were staying at Jiang Hai's place tonight. They would go to the dormitory tomorrow. Although it was only a collective training, it was still training after all. So after signing the contract, they needed to eat and live with the other girls for half a month. They could only leave after CJ ended. Of course, in addition to sleeping time at night, if they had other time, they could also come to Jiang Hai. After arriving at the hotel, everyone had a good night's rest. The next day, Jiang Hai and the others accompanied Feng Yunxian and Ai Xiaoxi to sign the contract. Then, everyone decided to play in Shanghai together. The company that Feng Yunxian and Ai Xiaoxi signed the contract with was also a top company in the country. Jiang Hai did not know the specific name. He had not played games for a long time. He heard that this time, their company showed a total of 3 games and also signed 3 groups of SG players. When he saw Penelope, Azalina, Daliana, and Marian, the person in charge wanted to sign them, but he was rejected by Jiang Hai. After signing the contract, everyone went to the nearby area to play. To be honest, if it was a normal young person, Shanghai actually had a lot of fun, such as bars, nightclubs, some big shopping malls, and so on. It was an international city. But for Jiang Hai, it seemed that Shanghai did not have as many fun places as the imperial capital. The imperial capital had the Forbidden City, the Great Wall, the Summer Palace, Fragrant Hill, Hohai, and so on. Although he did not have much interest in it, it was still a good place to play. As for Shanghai, to be honest, Jiang Hai looked at the map and really did not know what was there to play. There was a TV tower and a leftover stadium of the World Expo. When he saw the TV tower on the Bund, he saw all of it. Other than that, there was nothing else to play with. Jiang Hai was not interested in buildings, science and technology museums, financial centers, and so on. If he came alone, he might go in and have a look. It was not very convenient to bring a group of women with him. Therefore, after a simple look around Shanghai, Jiang Hai and the others only stayed for 3 to 4 days before leaving. Although Feng Yunxian and Ai Xiaoxi were not professional dancers, they had started learning after all, so they had to be more attentive. They also did not have time to accompany Jiang Hai and the others. They left together and focused on preparing for CJ. As for Jiang Hai and the others, they continued south and went to other places to play. They first went to Hang City to see the legendary West Lake. But to be honest, West Lake was a big name, but when you really went to play, you would feel that it was a bit of a trap. For example, if you built a pond to raise some fish, it would be called a scenery. If you built a small bridge, it would be called a broken bridge. 18 miles was actually a very short bridge. It was called 18 miles because it was sent back and forth. If you put 3 stone altars in the water, it would also be called a scenery. Of course, there were historical stories and allusions, especially those romantic stories. For example, Su Xian and the White Snake, Liang Shambua and Zhu Yingtai. Liang Shambua had 105 brothers and 3 sisters. They specialized in robbing landlords and enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. They even attacked Zhu Yingtai's hometown, the Zhu family manor, 3 times. This enmity was irreconcilable. How could the two of them be together? It seemed like he had mixed up the books. But no matter what, Jiang Hai might not have liked this kind of elegant atmosphere. This could be seen from the animals he raised. In addition to the front teeth, he preferred powerful creatures, not cute ones. Therefore, he was naturally not interested in romantic love stories. He only liked to write love stories that moved people, but Penelope and the others still liked this place very much. They played here for many days. And these days, they also ate all the famous delicacies here. The most famous place here was none other than Lu Wai Lu. Of course, the food there was quite expensive, but Jiang Hai didn't care. After eating a meal, he concluded that it was a bit of a scam. West Lake fish in vinegar gravy, to be honest, most people weren't used to it. Song Fu fish soup. Jiang Hai was not used to eating it. Beggar's chicken soup. Of course, he was not used to eating it either. There were only 2 things that Jiang Hai liked to eat. One was the Longjing shrimp. Jiang Hai really liked to eat this. The fragrance of the Longjing, coupled with the elasticity of the shrimp, combined together, the taste was indeed quite perfect. The other one was the soup dumplings here. The crab roe, the pure meat, and the fresh shrimp all tasted quite good. These days, he had to eat this for breakfast every day. But other than these things, he was not used to eating zhejiang dishes. They stayed at West Lake for 5 days and played for 5 days. Then, they went to Wuzhen to play. Of course, this was a water town. After arriving, there was not much fun. After a simple tour of these 2 places, they went to Su Province, which was also the main target of Jiang Hai's trip to the south. In Su Province, they went to Nandu first. Nandu was the capital of the previous dynasty. It was also the first capital of the Ming dynasty. So, there were more things to play than Shanghai. Of course, the things to play here were things that Jiang Hai was more interested in. Some monasteries, Ming Shaoling, the presidential palace, and so on. There were more places to see. Although the scenic spots were not as grand as the capital, the quality was not bad. Most importantly, there were many things to see. After playing here for a while, Jiang Hai sent Delina, Marian, and Azalina back to Shanghai. Naturally, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi were there to take care of them. Jiang Hai, on the other hand, had to continue south to Tongnan City. His goal this time was there. There were no scenic spots there, so Jiang Hai didn't plan to take too many people there. In the end, he only asked Penelope to go with him. After he was done, he would return to Shanghai and take Delina and the others back to the capital. Then, they would return to the United States from the capital. Not to mention Delina and the others, even Jiang Hai was a little tired. But thinking of the development of his manor, he was still very happy. After arriving in Tongnan City, Jiang Hai and Penelope took a good rest in the hotel for a whole day. After adjusting their bodies to the best state, the 2 went to their destination this time, Hai County. The target they were looking for this time was located there, the Huayang Group. Speaking of this group, it was very famous in China. Its main business scope was special products of aquaculture. This time, the Changjiang swordfish that Jiang Hai wanted was a product of the Huayang Group. If he wanted to buy it, he had to come over and negotiate with them. Fortunately, the higher-ups had already informed them. When Jiang Hai called to say that he would come over, the people here had already sent a car and a person to take Jiang Hai and the others to the Huayang Group's precious fish breeding and scientific research base. That was the real place. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.